Hello and welcome to the ActualTech Media Live Megacast, covering AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform solutions. We are live from Las Vegas for this special Megacast event. Now, on today's event, you'll hear from expert presenters at Rubrik, SADA, Veeam, Nutanix, Firemon, Flexential, and SolarWinds. What an awesome event we have lined up for you today. Today's event is happening on the heels of the Amazon AWS reInvent conference in Las Vegas, where over 70,000 attendees have been learning about the latest announcements from AWS. And on today's event, we'll be covering solutions that fit not just into the AWS public cloud solution, but across the entire public cloud and hybrid cloud landscape. So thank you to today's sponsors, and thank you to you, our audience, for joining us. Now, before we get started, we have a little bit of housekeeping here that we first need to cover. We'll be giving out some awesome prizes. I'll talk about the requirements to be eligible for those prize drawings in just a moment. We want this to be an educational event, so I encourage you to click on the Q&A tab to ask all your questions related to multi-cloud, enterprise cloud, hybrid cloud, public cloud. We have experts available to answer all of your questions. And we'll also be asking you, our audience, some poll questions as well about what you think about today's solutions and what's your take on public cloud. And we appreciate your participation in those. We also want this to be a social event. The hashtag for today's event is ATM Live. And you can tweet directly from your console using that hashtag. I'll be tweeting during the event using the hashtag, and I'll be following just about anyone out there who does. And finally, resources on the handouts tab there in your audience console. We have links to websites for all of today's presenters where you can get additional information. I should also point out that if you've been on these events before, you might notice your console looks a little bit different. Today we have a slides window, and then we have a video window. And you'll see presentations in both of those different windows. So I encourage you to click on the questions box, the slides box, and the video box, resize those, move them around your browser window and your monitor to fit them as best as possible. And that way you can see all of the architectural diagrams, you can see all the video content, and all the live demos that will be happening on today's event. Now, on today's event, we'll be giving out 5 Surface Pro X. These are the all-new hybrid tablet from Microsoft. These are some awesome machines. We'll give out 5 of those, and also an Amazon $500 gift card after every presentation. To be eligible, you must be present on the live event. There are a number of other legal prize terms and conditions that you can find at our website, events.actualtechmedia.com. The link to that is also in the handouts tab. All prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to ActualTech Media. Now, through the Megacast event series, and thanks to generous attendees who win prizes, we have donated thousands of dollars to charities that you see on the screen here over the years. And if you choose to donate your prize value to charity, we would love to help you do that. Now, social media, the hashtag today is ATM Live. You can follow ActualTech Media on Twitter, and you can follow me, David M. Davis, as well. I also encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn, where we're posting all of our latest and greatest content. And finally, you can subscribe to ActualTech Media, not only on LinkedIn, but also on Facebook, our YouTube channel, and the 10 on Tech podcast. Now, before we jump into it with today's presenters and some poll questions that I have for you, I want to first do a little bit of level setting when it comes here to the state of the cloud. Now, traditional legacy infrastructure, as you probably know, can be rather inefficient. It can be complex, costly, and increasingly, it's just not meeting the needs of the business. And so what companies are turning to today are more efficient solutions, whether those be on-premises solutions or solutions in the public cloud, or a combination of the two. They're looking for greater efficiency and less complexity from their enterprise IT hardware and software. And that's what you'll be learning about on the event today. Now, cloud-like solutions, whether it's a public cloud like AWS, Azure, or GCP, or an on-premises private cloud, can provide us greater efficiency, greater agility for the business and the IT organization. This sort of infinite scalability, a pay-as-you-go or utility-based pricing model that allows you to move from CapEx to operational expenses. And ultimately, the real goal is to allow you and the IT organization to focus on the business help the business do more, help to enable the business technologically to be more competitive, to be more agile. And in the case of most businesses, unless you work at a nonprofit or the government, to be more profitable, right? That's what we in IT are aiming to do. But the problem out there is that there's just so much confusion around the cloud. Cloud has become an overused, overmarketed buzzword, and unfortunately, nobody really understands anymore when you talk about cloud exactly what you're referring to. I mean, there are multiple forms of cloud. You've got private cloud that you can run on premises. You've got public cloud solutions like AWS. You have hybrid cloud solutions that connect on premises to the public cloud. More and more companies are using multi cloud or multiple clouds to run their applications. And then sometimes you'll hear the term enterprise cloud as well. And to top that off, we have software as a service solutions, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, disaster recovery as a service, backup as a service, and so many other ways to leverage public cloud. And then if you look at AWS, GCP, and Azure, there are still tremendous differences between them, not just in their user interface and how you administer them, but when you dig a little bit deeper into how they work and how they do what they do, there are tremendous disparities. You have incompatibilities between on premises and cloud images, and differences in management models between on and off premises. And I think what so many companies are finding out is that there's a great difference between the expectation of public cloud and the reality of public cloud. And that's why I'm thankful. We have some really expert presenters on the event today. I've spoken to every one of them, and you're going to hear some really insightful information, some very actionable and real world advice on how real IT organizations can leverage public cloud and do it intelligently and efficiently, make it as affordable as possible, and help make you and IT the superhero of your company when it comes to technology. And on the event today, you'll learn about private cloud, data protection in the cloud, the Google Cloud Platform, cloud based security, cloud management, disaster recovery as a service, and so much more. So bring all your questions. Today's presenters want to help solve your technology challenges. And with that, let's do a few poll questions before I introduce you to our first presenter. All right, first poll question is on the screen, and I'm going to share the results of these poll questions with you. It should be a simple question, and that is, which public cloud do you use today? And I'm curious to find out the results of this as well, from the ActualTech Media audience. Which public cloud are you using today? Or maybe you're not doing anything in public cloud or hybrid cloud as of yet, or maybe never, and that's okay. I'm okay with that as well. So I see all the responses coming in. Thank you so much for those. I will share the results of this question again with you in just a moment. Let's get a few more responses from the audience. All right, thank you everyone who responded to that poll question. Let me share the results with you. And, oops, sorry. Wrong slide. There we go. There are the results on the screen. And the results say 46% are using AWS, 53% are using Azure, 18% not doing anything in public cloud, hybrid cloud as of yet, 8% using some other cloud solution. And so, obviously, because this is a multi-select question, we don't know how many people are just using AWS and how many people are just using Azure, and then how many people are using both, let's say, AWS and Azure. So still interesting responses there, but what I find most interesting, I think, is that Azure came out ahead of AWS, and you don't often hear that in the press or in the media. So very interesting. Thank you for responding to that one. Let's see, I've got another question for you here, and that is around the same lines, related to public cloud. What benefits do you anticipate receiving from the public cloud, if you plan to do anything, with the public cloud at all, or are already doing it? So let me leave that up for just a minute. And 63% said greater scalability or availability. I find that actually very interesting because a lot of times I see cost savings as the number one anticipated benefit. But in this case, scalability and availability were by far the winner. And then greater agility and cost savings were actually tied. So very interesting. Love to see those responses, very insightful. I hope that you found that interesting as well to see what your peers on this event are doing. There are hundreds of other IT professionals on the event today, so you can kind of see what they're interested in when it comes to public cloud and which public cloud solutions they are using. All right, and with that, I'm excited to introduce today's first presenter on the event, and that is Mr. Tim Woods, Vice President of Technology Alliances at Firemon. And now we're going to go to ActualTech Media CEO Scott Lowe and Mr. Tim Woods of Firemon.
Hi there, I'm Scott Lowe with ActualTech Media, and I'm now joined by Tim Woods, who is the Vice President for Technology Alliances for Firemon. Tim, thank you for joining us for today's event.
Thank you, Scott. It's a pleasure to be here today.
So Tim, I'm sure you're aware, Firemon's been doing the security thing for a long time, and you've seen a lot of industry trends come and a lot of industry trends go. What are some of the things you're seeing today that are really important for people to understand?
It's a great question, Scott. And I've been at Firemon myself for about 12 years, but Firemon has been doing this for a long time. We have a lot of deep domain expertise, better part of 15 years now. And so there's definitely, and we focus primarily on large enterprise, but we also have small, medium, and large type clients. So across almost every single market sector. So the challenges are not unique to any one sector either, but we're seeing this rise in complexity, challenging companies more and more, lack of visibility, especially as they're embarking on their digital transformation journeys and cloud-first strategies, and they're hitting this complexity wall, and that they haven't really kind of faced head on in the past. But it's a real thing. It's a real live breathing thing. You can't really reach out and touch it or necessarily see it, but it's there, and companies are struggling with it today.
And how is that complexity manifesting itself and impacting business operations and technology operations?
You see it in a number of different ways, and that is a great question because that really defines it. It's hard to fix something if you don't kind of define what it is that you're trying to fix, right? We see it manifest itself in a number of different ways. Rules. Take example, security enforcement points. We've seen just the sheer volume of firewall rules over the last, say, 5 years, just the last 5 years. I go back, and I'll date myself here just a little bit. I go back maybe, say 8 years ago. I remember when I saw my first firewall that had 10,000 rules on it, and I thought to myself, how could you possibly need 10,000 rules on a firewall? And today it's not unusual for us to see firewalls with 40,000 and 50,000 rules on them. And so we see this, if you picture it, it's like a hockey stick going up and to the right of this just sheer volume of rules growing. And that's mergers and acquisitions and regulatory compliance initiatives and microsegmentation. There's all kinds of reasons, and going into the cloud, there's all kinds of reasons for this volume growth. But where the complexity comes into play is there's two parts here. One is the personnel needed to manage this rise in this sheer volume of rule growth, we'll call it, has not also went up, proportionate to the increase. And so they're struggling with just managing this volume of rules manually. If you don't have some type of automation to help you leverage this, it's just humanly impossible to manage to try to understand policy behavior. So that's one type, just this sheer volume of enforcement rules. Deployment of applications and assets, resources and services into the cloud and not being tracked judiciously as well. We're seeing that as a form of complexity, kind of organic growth. Sometimes organic growth is good. Sometimes organic growth is bad if you're not tracking it along the way. And so we see some of that kind of manifest itself as well. So we're seeing these things kind of grow within the organization. Unused rules, duplicate rules, shadow rules. Probably the worst offender of all of them is overly permissive rules within the environment as well. We see too many headlines as a result of that, right, due to misconfigurations within the various organizations as well.
It would seem to me that when you don't have something in an automated way helping address what I would call rule sprawl, for lack of,
Right.
in some historical parlance, it would result in potential security issues because organizations don't know what they have. There's something that happens, you have to have people combing through tens of thousands of rules to try to figure out what happened, why something critical is being blocked, why something non-critical is being enabled when it shouldn't be. And it would seem like it would open the organization to additional risk when it's intended to enact just the opposite. Would that be an accurate statement?
Now you're absolutely right. I mean, as complexity goes up, we're absolutely convinced as complexity goes up, the probability of human error creeping into the equation also goes up. The probability of risk being introduced into the equation also goes up. And so if you're not hitting that head on, you're guaranteed to run into those two walls for sure.
And one of the things you mentioned was microsegmentation. That just adds an additional layer of complexity to the whole thing because people trying to do that manually are probably going to hurt themselves at some point.
And complexity in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing, so when I talk about complexity or when I speak about complexity, I'm really talking about that unnecessary complexity
Absolutely.
that creeps into the equation over time. A really good security implementation and a good security architecture is going to have some inherent complexities, right? But I'm really talking about that unnecessary, those technical mistakes that creep into, and as you called it out, firewall bloat or firewall sprawl over time that gets in there. If you're not managing, there's not good hygiene applied to those firewalls over time, man, that security debt just continues to deepen. And at some point, that node is going to become due.
And this also eventually has an impact on overall visibility into what's happening on the network. And what are some of the examples when you think about network visibility that these kinds of issues are manifesting themselves and impacting the organization?
I always say, and especially as we get into cloud, right? Because things can change so rapidly in cloud. The frequency of change can be quite high, maybe more so than what we see when we're on-prem or in the data center, or even the hyper-converged data center. But when change happens, you really have to answer that question. Was it good change or bad change? If you don't see the change, you don't even have the opportunity to answer that question. But you have to look at that and say, something changed. Did that change have an impact to my security posture, my compliance posture, my business continuity? Was there any? But again, if you don't have good visibility into your infrastructure to be able to track change, and almost any regulatory compliance initiative, I mean, just pick one of them. One of the first things they ask is, are you monitoring for change? And if you say no, you get a big red X right off the bat, right? If you say no to that question, but that's just part of visibility, and so detecting change, make sure that it's change that we expected, making sure that it's change that's documented, making sure that it's change that was performed during the period that we expected that change to take place as well. But again, it all starts with having good visibility within your infrastructure, hybrid infrastructure, both on-prem and into the cloud. And so when that change happens, you need to be able to detect that change and be able to identify whether it was good or bad change.
So before we continue, I think it's important for the audience to understand how Firemon is helping them attack this complexity issue. Can you give us the 30,000-foot view of what Firemon brings to the table to help organizations wrangle their security organization into some level of improvement?
Yeah, as I said, we've been doing this a long time, but we do help extend your visibility across your hybrid environments. We help you to apply real-time compliance, analyzation to those changes, being able to apply good security hygiene to your firewall policies. Everything we do is real-time, and we're trying to not only identify when change happens, but answer that who, what, when, where, all those questions that need to be answered, and making sure that the correct documentation is applied also at the same time. Auditors love that kind of stuff anyway, whenever you can tell them, when was this rule changed? Why was it changed? Who does it belong to? When's the next time that we have to review it? Things of that nature. So we track all of that. But moreover, right now, we're helping companies to automate some of the processes within their organizations too. If you're not, as I talked about that sheer volume of rules going up and to the right, and the resources necessary to manage that kind of remaining stagnant or remaining static. if you're not adding people, you can have the best technology on the planet, but if it's not managed correctly, then you're not going to realize the return or the benefit out of that investment, right? So we have to look for ways, if we're not able to add resources or people, we have to look for ways to help our people work smarter. And we believe automation is the answer to part of that. So we're trying to help organizations, and they have some incredibly smart people, and they tell me all the time, Tim, it's not that I don't know what to do, it's having the time to do what I need to do. And so we need to empower them. And we believe automation is definitely a way to that.
So when I deploy Firemon, am I deploying a new appliance? Am I deploying an overlay? What am I deploying when I deploy Firemon to help me, achieve the goals you just outlined?
Yeah, so it can be deployed. Firemon physically can be deployed. The entire solution itself can be deployed both as a physical appliance in a data center somewhere, but it virtualizes our platform. Our entire solution virtualizes quite well, whether it's in the cloud or a virtualized instance somewhere in a data center as well. So, and it scales quite well too. I mean, we scale to whatever the size. As I said earlier, we focus pretty much on the very large enterprise type environments, and that's where you're going to find a lot of large complexity as well. And that's really where our value proposition is amplified, when you have these really complex hybrid type networks. And so, but we can scale to any size necessary to meet the requirements of the environment as well. So it's easily deployed, like I said, either physical or virtual, and we try to make that deployment aspect of it as easy and as simple as possible. But once deployed, then we're helping to monitor your security implementations. When a change happens, identifying that change, alerting you to that change, propose changes. We want to sandbox those and identify in advance. So instead of reacting to a change, we want to be able to proactively assess to say, hey, this change that you proposed, that you've approved, because we're seeing a large number of changes, approved changes, cause an impact to the environment after they've been implemented, right? And they've already went through the approval process. They weren't necessarily sandboxed in the context of the policy that they're targeted for. So we want to help assess the validity of that change, proposed change, prior to implementation, to say, hey, is this going to have an impact on my compliance posture? Is this going to is this going to introduce unacceptable risk into my environment as well? Because at the end of the day, we're trying to manage risk to a level that's acceptable by the business, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things that we're seeing, we're here at the reInvent show this week, and there's obviously organizations deploying cloud and hybrid cloud and multi-cloud and whatever cloud they want to do these days. So it increases opportunity for intrusion. And as companies are continuing to embrace cloud adoption, it doesn't look like the threat landscape is ever going to shrink. So what would you say to these companies that are embarking on a digital cloud journey, or even those that have already made the leap? What advice could you give them to help them do better?
Yeah, it's probably the best summation. It's not going to slow down, right? The threat landscape is growing. The business is not going to stop and say, hey, here's what we think is happening. We believe that the business has accelerated past our ability to consistently secure it in a timely manner. If you can't honor those business requests on a timely basis, what's the business going to do? They're going to go ahead. They're not going to wait. They're not going to stop. Right. You tell somebody no, they're going to look for a way around you. You tell somebody to wait long enough, they're going to look for a way around you. So I would say that, from an organizational perspective, if I was talking to a CIO or a CISO, I would say, look for a way to ensure that your security has parity with the speed of your business. Make sure that security is embedded in the deployment process. Make sure that in your agile development teams, that security is a component of the process. If you look at those processes, if you look at your individual organizations, make sure that they're not siloed and that they're collaborative in nature, whether that's compliance and the business teams and the infrastructure security or new cloud security teams that are evolving as well. Because right now what we're seeing a lot of individuals take responsibilities, business owners, stakeholders, DevOps, taking responsibility for the configurations of their own data security controls as they're deploying their applications, assets, and resources, services into the cloud, and they're not necessarily getting it right. Not that they're not smart people.
Right.
It's just they're not. It's not their forte. It's not what they're well grounded in. It's not where they came from.
And it's a different beast.
It is. It is a different beast, and so we need to ensure that security has parity with the speed of the business. At the end of the day, we need a centralized policy that can be technically enforced.
And that's where Firemon can help them understand, bring this all together into a single place and say, here's where you need to be looking to make sure that you don't unnecessarily expose yourself to something you didn't anticipate.
We do. We give you a collaborative platform that gives you that central pane of glass that combines all those security policies in one central location that can be centrally managed, centrally viewed, and centrally collaborated with across the teams.
So Tim, if people want to learn more about Firemon, what can they do? Where can they go next?
They can go to our site, obviously, firemon.com. There's a ton of resources out there. We just finished our 2019 State of the Firewall. We do once our 6th annual report, State of the Firewall report. We also do State of the Hybrid Cloud. That information is out there. There's just a lot of material in our resource section there that I would solicit our audience, our listening audience, to go and look at. I think they'll find it very valuable and very timely information that they can use in their day-to-day jobs.
And we would also recommend that people go get your Cutting Through the Haze 3 Steps to Gain Control of Cloud Security. Where can they go to get that? To the Firemon website?
It's at the Firemon resource website too, and it'll direct you there. So just released, hot off the presses. So go get that. Go get that today.
They should. We will make sure we encourage people to do that. Tim, thank you so much for your time and your insight. It's appreciated.
Scott, thank you very much. I appreciate the time. Love to do it again.
All right, we're back. Great video there. Great presentation, interview with Mr. Scott Lowe and Tim Woods of Firemon. We've got some good questions rolling in about the Firemon solution. So thank you for those. We will get those answered here very quickly. On the screen now is a question. What additional information would you like about the Firemon solution? And let's see, I'll just leave that up there for a few moments, give you a few minutes to answer that question. All right, thank you everyone who answered that poll question. We appreciate that. Firemon is a really cool product. And for those who said they'd like to try it for themselves, I encourage you to do that because I've seen a demo of it and it's very impressive security tool. All right, it's now time for our first gift card winner. We have an Amazon $500 gift card. That's going to Sean Ford from Missouri. Congratulations, Sean Ford of Missouri. You won the first Amazon $500 gift card. Got a lot more gift cards and Microsoft Surface tablets to give away, so make sure you stay tuned for those. All right, one more poll question before we jump into our next presentation here, and that is, what's your time frame for updating your existing or selecting new cloud solutions? And this is just kind of high level, not specific to any cloud solution. Just kind of wondering if you're on the cloud event today, what's your time frame? Are you looking to do something with hybrid cloud immediately or in the next 12 to 24 months, or just don't have a specific plan right now? Leave this up for a few minutes to let you answer that one, and then we'll move to our next presentation. All right, thank you everyone for answering that poll question. And now it's time to move to our next interview on the Cloud Megacast event. Here we go.
And we're now happy to introduce Priya Balakrishnan, who is the Director of Product Marketing for Rubrik. Priya, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Scott.
And you have a great presentation around data management modernization for us.
That's right, and I will be going over how you need to think about data management in a multi-cloud environment today. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off because we do have a short time to present all of the material. Thank you very much for joining us today, folks. Jumping right into the discussion. A lot of you are in one of these 3 different phases of, where your data center is. You have digitization pressures that are changing your application landscape, and oftentimes than not, most of you are, on your way towards the cloud, right? So you're either substituting internal infrastructure for cloud infrastructure. That means you're, possibly lifting and shifting applications to the cloud, or building new applications on AWS or Azure or GCP. And others are probably a little bit more advanced in their multi-cloud strategy, and that is because you probably want to meet your application needs or your reliability requirements around your applications. You're probably leveraging a lot of cloud applications that serve business critical functions like Office 365, email, messaging, and so on. So that's kind of what the future of an enterprise looks like, even if you're not there right now. The future is kind of this multi-cloud environment where you have data centers, private clouds, edge sites, colos, managed services environments, SaaS applications. And when you look about managing data throughout the life cycle of this multi-cloud environment, it really becomes very, very complex. Your applications and data are scattered across these various silos. Your remote branch offices are becoming denser. And with your pressure of going to the cloud, you have new tension points that you're facing in terms of, how do you increase cloud usage without getting locked in? How do you, crush this kind of technical debt you have from managing all of these legacy solutions, and also dodging all of these ransomware attacks that have become very prevalent right now? And when you have to manage the data throughout these tension points and its life cycle, your team is left with very many silos of tools that don't necessarily talk to each other. If you look at your infrastructure team, you're probably using 20, 30-year-old architectures with disparate hardware. You use tools for continuous data protection, and as you start using O365 and so on, you have various other solutions or cloud solutions that provide you backup. If you look at your application team, they're probably using various backup services for Oracle and SAP and SQL and now NoSQL environments as well. You're probably using Actifio or Delphix and so on. And if you look at cloud itself, that is a completely different data point where your cloud teams are essentially using various different silos as well, right? And now what this really means is that if you have, you look at that from your team's perspective, right? I mean, they are creating backup jobs for each of these applications, determining windows, setting lifecycle rules, taggings, exclusions, setting policies for database applications. And each cloud requires its own operational workflow. There are just so many different silos. And there is no way your team can drive this kind of consistent and predictable processes in terms of how data is backed up, how it is recovered, how it is governed, how it is controlled, because there is no single source of truth to manage risk and really operationalize the data. That's kind of where Rubrik comes in, right? Rubrik provides this new approach to data management. It converges all of these multiple different points into a single software solution that you can manage across on-prem, edge, and multi-cloud environments. And our software can be deployed in multiple form factors, whether it's plug and play through Rubrik appliances or third-party hardware, or in a virtual appliance, or in cloud-native SaaS solutions as well. So let me give you a little bit of background on how Rubrik got started, right? If you talk about backup and recovery, that market hasn't really changed in a few decades. You have multiple different tools to run backup software, writing to some media, then there's a catalog database, metadata that's maintained for you. You have something for long-term archival. And here we are in 2019 and still running that kind of same 90s architecture. That's what Rubrik aim to solve, in that it collapses and consolidates all of these different silos with a modern software-centric solution. It eliminates these legacy bottlenecks. It converges all of these necessary components to build your data protection architecture into this single software platform that can run anywhere, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud or on the edge. Everything about how Rubrik works is centered around ease of use and simplicity in design. So just talking a little bit about that, what I really mean by simplicity in design is that right from our initial scan and ingest of data that's being backed up to all of the applications that we support, we auto-discover your environment, whether it's physical or virtual, with kind of this very simple, rack and go kind of approach. And then, you don't have to create these scripts to manage all of your backup jobs and figure out the schedules with blackouts and exclusions and so on. Instead, Rubrik automates the way you do these backups with this intelligent, SLA policy-based engine. Rubrik was kind of the pioneer of that technology where we had this kind of SLA-based policy engine that reduces the amount of hours you need to spend babysitting and hand-holding these backups. In addition to that, we provide this kind of unified management of your on-prem and cloud environments within a single console, irrespective of where Rubrik is deployed. And we provide instant recovery of your VMs, of your SQL or Oracle databases, which means you can now achieve RTOs of seconds to minutes. All the data is indexed. That means, what we have the ability to do is we provide a Google-like search so that you can recover at an extremely granular level. So you can do file-level recovery or object-level recovery. And for your most important VMs, you can use Rubrik to deliver these tight RPOs with continuous data protection. And again, it's a simple swipe within that SLA policy engine or SLA domain that I just talked about. And everything on Rubrik is encrypted and secured. That means it's immutable. Data within Rubrik can never be written onto. And that means it delivers additional security and controls over how we protect your data. And finally, the solution was kind of built for easy, secure cloud usage. And when we talk about cloud, that means you can really fast track your, cloud usage, because that's kind of where we originally started from, right? We see customers use Rubrik to kind of do this long-term data retention to lower costs. You can send and store data cost effectively in the cloud with the ability to search that data. You can instantiate an instance in the cloud automatically, and this is very helpful for test dev environments or refactoring specific sections of your applications or instances in the cloud. You can orchestrate recovery in the case of an outage or disaster. And lastly, there is cloud native protection, where we provide the ability for you to protect your AWS and Azure workloads. You have the ability to kind of manage a lot of your data with something that we call as Rubrik Polaris that I will demonstrate shortly, and you have the ability to do that. So what is Rubrik Polaris? So far what we've discussed is all the backdrop of the Rubrik platform itself. When we consider, protecting workloads in the cloud, it kind of needs a different approach, which is why we introduced Rubrik Polaris. And that is a metadata repository, and it centralizes intelligence from your various different Rubrik deployments. And now, once it centralizes all of this intelligence on your data, it allows you to operate on the entirety of your data set, right? So it doesn't matter where your Rubrik deployment is, whether it's on-prem, whether it's in the cloud, or whether it's on the edge. Rubrik Polaris collects all of this intelligent descriptive metadata about your applications and data, and it normalizes it into this universal data graph. And this universal data graph describes your data so that you can easily search and understand it, track how that data has changed and who has access to it, and so on. And by using this kind of sophisticated metadata framework, now what you can do is you can simplify and speed your data integration. You can you can use this data for kind of serving various business needs around, around compliance, or around data privacy, or around ransomware recovery, and so on. And what you're actually doing is now, because you're kind of using this SaaS-based metadata framework, which we call as Rubrik Polaris, to centrally manage all of your data. Now you're eliminating your data silos. You're extending your data to work across, hybrid and multi-cloud environments. And because it's SaaS-based, you're also reducing and minimizing the operational complexity around upgrades or around patches and so on. And we really take that burden of managing the environment itself for you. So once we introduced Rubrik Polaris, what we understood was that we have a wealth of information and intelligence available about your data. And using this rich metadata, and Rubrik is an API-first platform, using our own APIs, we've then delivered these purpose-built solutions that extend the value of your data across a variety of data management use cases. So not only can you centrally manage all of your Rubrik deployments, we provide an out-of-the-box pre-built solution for ML-based ransomware detection and recovery. We provide this as the framework to protect your cloud workloads like Office 365 or Azure VMs or AWS EC2 instances and so on. We provide you the ability to, classify your data so that you can now identify the data that is at risk, sensitive data that is at risk for exposure, so that now you have the ability to demonstrate compliance and ensure that you're meeting all of the regulatory standards around GDPR or around CCPA or HIPAA or PCI and so on, right? And, as an example, like, how did we use this data, right? We use this to protect your cloud native data workloads like we discussed, right? If you have cloud instances running in AWS and Azure, we leverage this kind of Polaris architecture to really protect your AWS environment. So there's zero infrastructure required. You don't need to install an agent within the VM to get things working. You don't need to back up for a proxy VM running into your, to perform your backup and recovery. And if you have dozens of accounts of, AWS accounts or Azure subscriptions, our solution dramatically simplifies the way you can actually protect these siloed cloud instances. In addition to that, we use the same SLA policy engine that we just discussed about some time back to provide these incredibly fast backups because we have the ability to take snapshots across a large number of disks. So recoveries are very fast that, oftentimes and not, you can recover within a minute or so. Our recovery options will, minimize egress costs because oftentimes storing in the cloud is not expensive. But if you want to retrieve that data, that just becomes prohibitively expensive. And so, now with our snapshot-based copies, you now have the ability and granular recovery, you can reduce and minimize your egress costs. And, and through our metadata management and tag-based protection, you can really keep track of which tags within your VMs have been accidentally deleted or have had some kind of, or has failed, then you have the ability to use our recovery during a restore operation. And finally, the benefit of using our solution is that you have the single, command center to manage your data on-prem as well as in the cloud. In addition to that, I just briefly talked about how, the fact that Rubrik is an API-first platform. It is extremely powerful, and we kept this in mind when we built Rubrik, right? So for instance, every functionality within the Rubrik UI uses our own APIs. So the APIs are extremely robust. And, we know that, within IT, you need to keep everything up and running. So backup and recovery and data protection cannot live in its own island. It should play well with the tools you use every day. And that's why, we make these APIs, very available to you. And these, kind of RESTful APIs make it easy to integrate with your existing tools to build services in your data center. So for example, if you want to manage all your infrastructure operations from a centralized interface, we integrate with service portals like ServiceNow, vRealize Automation, or vCloud Director. And you can access Rubrik functionality via your own ITSM tool. We've integrated with tools your developers love, like Terraform or Puppet or Chef or Ansible and so on. And we also believe in, an open framework and support open source community. So all of this is available on GitHub pages. And, we also, you can also, customize these with any programming language of your choice. So we have pre-built SDKs as well to do that. So what this really means is we provide a very extensible backup software that kind of embraces how you and your IT organization work. And we really integrate and interoperate with your existing frameworks and workflows. In conclusion, what Rubrik really does is it radically simplifies managing your data in this kind of increasingly diverse data estate, right? So our unique approach to data protection means that we can deliver a single source of truth in a hybrid and multi-cloud environment and provide end-to-end data management. So, so that you have the ability to gain this kind of multi-cloud data control. We have thousands of customers that have, achieved data control in a multi-cloud environment. US Navy, as an example, was very frustrated with their legacy solution for inefficient backup. And with Rubrik, they were able to achieve near zero RTOs and reduce their management time and save over 50% in infrastructure costs. PACCAR, as an example, is a Fortune 500 company, commercial vehicle manufacturer, and they were maintaining an extremely complex legacy infrastructure that was not at all cloud ready. And with Rubrik, they started using cloud for long-term retention and eventually DR. And now they have, been able to avoid over $1 million in potential revenue loss due to downtime. So, ASL is around the ransomware protection, where, airline industries are constantly being attacked with ransomware and malware. And, using Rubrik, ASL is able to protect themselves from these kinds of, attacks, in addition to also achieving over 52% in TCO savings. So massive examples with like extremely large enterprise customers. And finally, just a word around our user conference. It's coming up next May in Chicago. We expect 1,000 users and practitioners and IT decision makers joining us there. And not only will we, it's a user conference, so it's not a sales conference. So we invite you to join us there, meet with the experts. We have a lot of, lot of activities planned, a lot of sessions planned. And in typical Rubrik style, we also host, a fantastic party. In the past, we've had Wu-Tang Clan or Ice Cube and so on. So really don't miss out the opportunity to join us. And you can register at forward.rubrik.com. With that, I would like to turn this over for some Q&A maybe.
Priya, that was a great presentation. We do have a couple of questions from the audience for you, and here is the first question. In reference to Polaris, why can't you just instantiate an instance of Rubrik in the cloud and store data in that cloud instance? Why do we actually need Polaris?
Oh, that's actually a great question. And, let me try and illustrate this with an example, right? And why we went down the path of Polaris itself. So cloud really requires a different kind of a data management approach, right? And the reason is because, when we first down the path of architecting for Office 365 protection, what we found out very early on was that our customers do not want their O365 data to leave the cloud into another location or account that was not owned by them. And this could be because either the network pipes are restrictive, or they're costly. And of course, in this day and age, physical movement of data can really have serious implications to data sovereignty, especially when you have regulatory and data privacy standards constantly evolving and changing regionally. Right, so we considered instantiating a full instance of Rubrik in the private cloud, but then for our customers, what we realized very quickly was that their cloud compute and costs can unpredictably skyrocket, right? And this means that this was really not an option, especially if they need to retrieve data or compute data. It becomes very, very prohibitively expensive. we also, that is why we, introduced Rubric Polaris, which is kind of this metadata repository. So it's not expensive. It requires a very small fraction of the Rubric instance actually running in your environment itself. But Rubric Polaris collects all of this intelligence from your disparate environments and allows you to operate on the data set in your cloud subscription automatically, right? So what this means is that now you can really use Rubric as an extensible platform and use all of this data that you have within Rubric to solve a variety of business value functions, right? I mean, so we have provided out-of-the-box capabilities around data classification and ransomware recovery. But if you want to do something more with that data, now you have that flexibility to have this collective unified view across all of your Rubric deployments without actually having to physically move the data and in a very cost-effective fashion.
Excellent. And we have one more question. What are the various Rubric archive targets that are available?
Oh, perfect. So the Rubric can actually archive to multiple different targets. So you can archive to AWS, Azure, GCP, any S3 or NFS compatible external target or tape. NAS Direct Archive is one of our most popular functionalities simply due to the nature of NAS file sets itself. Recently, we announced partnerships with NetApp as well as Microsoft. So for instance, with NetApp, you can use Storage Grid as an archive target, but we're also first to market with NetApp's proprietary API called SnapDiff, right? So we most recently announced that at NetApp Insight at the end of October. And this API, what it allows us to do is it allows us to quickly identify the file and directory differences between two snapshot copies, and it eliminates the need to scan files that a traditional backup application would require. So it does these incremental backups, and what that does is, what that means to you is that it helps you reduce the amount of load on your production environment by 10x. And because we're only looking at the differences inside of the NetApp systems, now it reduces the backup times dramatically from 15 hours to 15 minutes on some kind of benchmark testing that we did internally, right, with NetApp. And think about your environments, especially in big data environments where you have a lot of unstructured data, but in like extremely small files, but extremely large number of files. Something like this becomes hugely differentiating and helpful, right? And we have a lot of excitement with our customers around this, proprietary integration with this proprietary API that NetApp has provided. And it's a long-winded answer to your question, but it was important to answer that. So thank you.
Oh, it's much appreciated. And thank you, as always, for Rubric's participation in today's event. We always like hearing what's happening.
Wonderful. Thanks, Scott.
All right, great presentation there from Rubric. Now we've gone to a poll question that's on the screen that says, what additional information would you like about the Rubric solution? So I'll just leave that up. I found that very interesting, how you can use Rubric to protect your data both on premises and in the public cloud. So great presentation there from Rubric. So while I announce our next gift card winner, I'll just leave up the poll for you to respond to. All right, so the next Amazon $500 gift card, that's going to Daryl Tarpkin from New Jersey. Congratulations, Daryl Tarpkin from New Jersey. We have a lot more gift cards to give out, and still 5 more Microsoft Surface tablets. So make sure you stay tuned for those announcements. All right, excellent. Thank you, everyone who responded to that poll question. We do appreciate it. We've got some great questions rolling in from Rubric. We will do our best to answer those electronically, because we are moving on now to our next presentation. And with that, take it away, Miles. I'm excited to introduce Miles Ward, Chief Technology Officer at SADA. Miles, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for being on the event today, Miles. Take it away.
Great. My name's Miles. I'm CTO at SADA. SADA is a company that helps businesses implement the kinds of cloud technology that you've been hearing about all day and that you'll hear for the rest of the day. The picture that's on screen is one of Google's cloud data centers. They operate at a very radically different scale than all the technology companies you've been exposed to before. Remember, they've built 8 products that serve over 1 billion users. So it's a system that spans the planet, a system that's designed to handle all of the kinds of problems that you run into. What I hear from customers is that they live in the real world. They need solutions not that look like, they're designed for the Starship Enterprise or, pulled out of a Crayola cartoon full of colors. They need solutions to real world problems. They're trying to design systems that are built for security, that anticipate their regulatory complexity, that recognize the level of, some people call it legacy. I call them legendary applications that sit in their services. That mission to move from inefficient and potentially insecure and cost-ineffective systems into a real-world solution that solves those problems is a giant drive for change in major businesses. What we see companies trying to do is first to get a handle on their data, to better understand the information that they use to drive the business, to integrate that data into other sources and services to be able to bring value from that data out to their customers, to connect new applications to those sources of data, and then to be able to build a machine learning loop on top of that information. If this is the path for modernization for the majority of companies, how do you actually get started with that? What are the tools that you need to bring to bear in order to be able to capture the opportunity of digital transformation? SADA, my team, has been doing this for almost 20 years and has successfully implemented customer after customer after customer in their migration to public cloud and to value in these 4 distinct areas. I heard at the beginning of the brief that there were 4 basic values folks wanted to get out of today's call. They wanted to understand efficiency, scalability, agility, and lower costs. We have case studies from customers that we've served where they've earned all of those benefits. We worked with the folks at FoodJet who were bogged down by complicated management of AWS and the requirement to manage virtual machines and networks and all the complexity of instrumenting for scale. We helped them move to Google's App Engine, a completely hands-off platform as a service that solves the operations problems for customers. And the result of that has been a substantial increase in developer efficiency, much better customer experience through the integration of machine learning in their customer use loops, and a completely hands-off approach to security for their front end. 100% of that is managed by Google. If you're looking for scalability, take a look at the work that Flowplay has done. They build games on top of cloud platforms, but they had been working as well in an on-prem environment, a place where their servers maybe were holding them back from innovating more quickly. They evaluated all 3 of the major clouds, Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud, and found because of higher performance, their system response speed over doubled. They automatically earn DDoS protection against the distributed denial of services that can be so damaging for businesses like this, and have been able to shift focus to the features and gains that their customers want, not the just sort of administrative and infrastructural legwork required to do the basics. Same kind of story about agility from the folks at Formedica. They had huge transaction volumes and are encumbered by the regulatory complexity of HIPAA compliance, but identified that by using Kubernetes, by working together with the teams at Google Cloud, they were able not only to operate on that regulated data and in a way that is compliant with those regulations, but increase performance by over 50%, get to speed and savings on storage that are substantial over their existing environment, and get to a place where they're deploying changes in hours instead of days. That's literally a more agile business. We also worked with the folks at Northgate Mall to lower their costs. They estimate over $300,000 in annual savings because of the move from their on-premise data center combined with AWS into the infrastructure provided by GCP. So okay, you can get to efficiency, you can get to scalability, you can get to agility, and lower costs using the tools of public cloud and specifically GCP, how do you actually get there, right? There's a huge amount of technology to learn. These platforms are all fairly complex. There's a lot to get your company onboarded into an environment like that. I think SADA, where I work, is the best partner that you can use to be able to achieve those outcomes. I think we're the best because Google thinks we're the best. We're the ones who were called the Global Reseller Partner of the Year. We're #1 in GCP, #1 in G Suite, #1 in Maps deployments, #1 in Google Search. We really are the trusted supplier of implementation expertise for companies trying to get started on their path to digital transformation. Those services are not just about tech support to answer your questions or consultation to describe what the best practice is to move forward. We really deliver an end-to-end service for cloud consulting, cloud migration, change management, even custom app development. Those kinds of efforts help you take what we think are confident steps forward into public cloud instead of it all feeling like a mystery. We've heard from lots of customers that they keep putting a migration or a modernization on the whiteboard, but that they can never really pencil out how much is it going to cost, how long is it going to take, how do I mitigate all of the risks associated with that fundamental change. So SADA, because of the cyclical repeated experience in the work with customers successfully migrating them, we've done this enough times, something that most companies really only ever do once every 3 or 4 years. We're doing it hundreds of times a year. So we have enough information to be able to make it predictable for you. That means complete flat rate packages. I mean, like, I will commit to you how much it costs before we start, because I've done it enough times that I can make that bet. I can also commit to you how long it will take. Sometimes time really is money. Being able to get the change that you need to make made in a predictable time frame can be sometimes just as valuable as it being on a predictable budget. We've done this thousands of times across Google's products. We have a very close relationship with Google Engineering, and we're able to support you 24/7 through that kind of move. Whether you're trying to make a migration of virtual machines like VMs in VMware or AWS or Azure, if you want to have us help you migrate those images into Google Cloud and help you design an infrastructure for running those, that's the kind of engagement where we're seeing companies take big value in capturing the capabilities of public cloud. Maybe it's not just virtual machines, and you're trying to work also on the databases that sit behind them. You know, all of the different tools, the Hadoop and Cassandra, Mongo, Oracle, all the different data systems that you're using, there are either direct equivalents in Google Cloud or workalikes that are so much higher performance and higher reliability that you'll really want to migrate. But the transition between those two is complex, right? If your database goes offline, typically that means your application goes offline. So you're going to need not only a team like SADA that's done this, again, hundreds of times, but the tooling to systematize that migration in a way that's predictable and reliable. And I hear all the time from customers, they say, I love public cloud. I think the idea sounds awesome. It's clear that it's less expensive, that it's an easier path to a more secure environment, that it provides the efficiency and scalability and agility and lower cost that we talked about. But maybe I have a reason that I just physically can't go to those data centers, or my regulators say it's impossible for you to run in public cloud, or I've got a customer that demands my software or my service land inside their four walls. Google has built a software package called Anthos, a service for orchestrating public cloud resources that sit on your own computers. It's an entirely new model for public cloud where Google is bringing some of its secret sauce, some of its magic down into machines you build. And we're not talking about hundreds and hundreds of racks of equipment. I'm talking about a toaster. This is my team built just to be able to fit in overhead luggage that's powerful enough to run a little piece of the public cloud. And we built, just like we have a package for moving VMs and for moving databases, I even have a package for implementing Anthos, the inter-cloud operating system, the tool that will be used to orchestrate the deployment of application software irrespective of the infrastructure management environment that you operate in. Doesn't matter whether it's public cloud or your own toaster, you can run the same app. We know what that implementation process looks like because we've literally had to document it in writing for every one of our customers. It's a totally standard part of SADA's engagement model is to walk you through step by step, what are we going to do together? How are we going to evaluate that it works right? How do we make sure that you've gotten the value you want out at the end of our engagement, not just the promise of it working? We need to prove it to you. And whether that system runs in one of those little toasters on your desk and you're able to take advantage of Google's sophisticated technology that way, or it runs on the largest physical infrastructure available in the world on a network 5.5 times the size of the public internet, being powered by over $30 billion in direct investment by Google, that infrastructure is available for you to use. It is the platform for the next generation of businesses, and we're excited to help companies take you there. We think this is the right platform for you to choose, and that ours is the right team to choose to take you to that platform. That team is dedicated, full-time, certified, credentialed engineers, aligned with the needs of customers, experienced in the work that you maybe only do every once in a while, but we do every day, the work of transforming businesses, changing the way that they work, and taking them forward to what's next. Whether that's improving your virtual machines, helping you with the move from Office to G Suite, getting better information about the world around you through Google Maps, taking advantage of Google Search, or the migration into the world of containers beyond virtual machines. All of that, data science, data analysis, the integration work that you need to do are all a part of both professional services as well as managed services offerings from our North America-focused team. We are designed to plug into customers and work with them every day to be successful. And if something like this sounds interesting to you, not just as potentially a customer, but maybe as a team member, we're also totally hiring. So our growth rate is pretty incredible, and we're really excited to help plug into the next generation of engineers who will help customers move forward. That's what SADA does. That's how we do it. I'm super interested in your questions about Google Cloud, about Alphabet and Google's broader strategy around this technology world, about how SADA interfaces with Google and what our partnership looks like, maybe details about the technologies that I described or the ways that they can be applied to problems, or any questions about customers or other businesses that are finding great value from the platform. Really looking forward to your questions.
Great presentation, Miles. Really, really compelling, cool stuff. So let's see, some questions came in here. First question I wanted to ask you is about, they're asking basically, how can Anthos help me exactly? What does it do? What problems does it solve?
Sure. So Anthos installs and manages Kubernetes, which is a system for orchestrating the deployment of containers, which is an environment for running your software or software that you've purchased. It also installs and manages Istio, a secure network configuration environment that allows those software applications to communicate over entirely encrypted channels and to give you the kinds of operational controls like A/B testing or canary monitoring or circuit breaker patterns to maintain high availability. It also has a function called Anthos Migrate that automates the conversion of virtual machine images into container images. Yeah, just like the old VMware stuff that you could go from physical machines to VMs, now you can go from VMs to containers. And the results of that are double-digit percentage increases in utilization and efficiency on the infrastructure. Anthos is different than say GKE, Google's management environment for Kubernetes, in that it can run on-premise on bare metal hardware, and they are working very hard to be able to run on additional public cloud environments as well. That's all a part of the strategy of making it so that Anthos is the one API that you interact with to orchestrate your applications irrespective of where they run.
Very nice, very nice. And I'm curious, what have you seen in terms of interest and adoption around Kubernetes? Have a lot of companies migrated applications to Kubernetes, or do they plan to?
Yeah, we're seeing really substantial interest. There's almost no customer conversation that we're having where Kubernetes isn't a part of the discussion and a part of the strategy for businesses moving forward. I think if you look on GitHub, you'll see that it is in the top most popular open source projects ever. Like if Linux is number one, I believe Kubernetes is number two. So that level of focus, again, not only just from Google or from SADA as a contributor, but from the broader ecosystem of technology companies. Red Hat was just presenting. They contribute upstream to Kubernetes. IBM does. AWS does. Azure does. All of us are working together to try and construct a standard that allows interoperability and higher utilization and higher efficiency, not only for the infrastructure, but for the core operators who have to boss it around. They should have an easier job too.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, that's great to hear. And I'm also curious, the handout here that you all have in the audience console, it's all about your VM migration, the flat rate service. When people think about public cloud, maybe not everybody thinks about Google immediately. For those out there who haven't looked at Google, what do you think is unique or beneficial about Google maybe over some of the other cloud options?
Sure. Maybe three different major areas. First, I think if you're interested in your data and you want to better understand how to manage and operate and derive value from the information you have access to and your company is collecting every day, there isn't any better environment than Google's environments. You have to imagine, given that they're adding on the order of 25 tons of new disk every day to their data centers, they are doing quite a lot with data and have been able to monetize one of the world's highest performance businesses on the back of better understanding and analysis of data. They're taking the keys to the kingdom, the best tools they have, and making them available to every customer through Google Cloud. That transfer of value, being able to go from, SQL Server, where my user manual at my startup said anything above 100 transactions a second requires changes to the laws of physics, to Spanner, the database at Google, where my easy demonstration at Velostrada was 60 million transactions a second. There is just a huge difference. Second item that's super important is looking through the scale of operations that Google operates. So compare, AWS is built on top of Amazon, and an e-commerce website is a seriously hard workload. And Azure is built on top of the data centers built for Windows Update. And updating every PC in the world is a seriously hard workload. But I would be willing to bet that searching the entirety of the public internet, hosting everybody's email, managing all the maps, the 2 billion Android phones, and all of the advertising, and those are much more technically demanding workloads. They require much more physical infrastructure. And so Google's scale allows it to solve problems that some of the others struggle with. And the third area that I'd have you pay really close attention to is all of those products, the billion user services, they're all sold without user manuals, without help guides. That we've trained 1 billion people how to use these products because they're intuitive. And what we're hearing back from developers is they muscled their way through how to understand AWS because it was the only game in town and it was the only way for them to get access to an infrastructure they could rent by the minute. But given an exposure to Google's infrastructure, it's so much easier and it doesn't fight you every day. And the proof is in the churn rates. Customers leave AWS. They tend not to leave Google. They like it.
Very compelling, interesting stuff. I hadn't heard those before, so that's good info. Another question here they're asking about, can GCP help me if we want to keep our data on premises? Like, are there other ways that the Google Cloud can help with data protection or storage or DR, or, what do you recommend?
Yeah, the Anthos service that I described is on-premise. So you take your current VMware infrastructure. I bring out new machines if you need extra capacity. we install Anthos over the top, and now you have the ability to land workloads in a private environment, but using the ease of use from public cloud, the simplicity of access, the easy, low overhead for utilization, right? We hear, a good example is the folks I worked with at Spotify. They had an incredibly sophisticated development environment. They were publishing 2 changes a week to their primary production systems, and that sounds pretty good. By moving to GKE powered, which is the same system that runs inside of Anthos, they're now at 5,000 production deploys a day, right? It's like faster for their developers, and that means they earn more value more quickly.
Nice. I like that. I'm going to have to look at Anthos myself. You got me excited here. Let's see, another question. Can SADA and Google Cloud help me if I'm in a regulated industry like healthcare or finance or government?
Yeah, some of, even the case study that I put on here for Medica, they're a healthcare provider regulated under HIPAA. We definitely have customers in all of those categories, plenty of experience helping people implement PCI compliance. I'm personally the guy who represented Google at the FedRAMP moderate attestation, so happy to help with government workloads, state and local as well. We really have the expertise required to be exemplary in those sorts of situations. And when you're in that kind of situation, what you need is someone who's exemplary.
Another question, actually, you got Thomas out here. He's interested. What experience are you looking for in career candidates? You said you were hiring.
Sure. Yeah, we are hiring. We're looking for, folks that have worked in production contexts. They understand the complexity and the pressure and the sophistication that customers expect when they're running something for real, not just sort of an experiment or a sideline project. We're looking for folks that are familiar with cloud environments. Context and background from AWS or Azure or Google Cloud are very useful. We're also interested in people that can document. They have the ability to learn, that can show us that they've learned new stuff, because this environment is changing so rapidly. A big part of what it takes to be successful is just a consistent learning process, which SADA is a really big proponent of, and we support for our employees. So it's definitely a place where we hope you come to teach, and we hope you come to learn.
Excellent. Very nice. Another question here. You may have answered this already. I'm not sure. What's the biggest system you've seen run on Google Cloud, and can Google Cloud handle my business workload?
Sure. I've seen some pretty massive stuff. I was a part of the operations team that worked with Pokemon Go. Pokemon ran on Kubernetes, ran on Google Cloud, and was 53 times larger than the worst case they described to us in a matter of less than a week. For a chunk of time, they were operating, hundreds of thousands of individual containers supporting millions and millions of users around the world. Maybe another example that people would be familiar with, I helped architect and design the migration for Twitter's production use of Google Cloud. They are in production running their Hadoop workloads, which is 600,000 cores, over 300 petabytes of active data. It's data that you weigh in tons. I also worked together with the folks that were supplying the use of BigQuery, Google's managed data warehouse, to the team at Motorola, and that's reviewing and evaluating the logs of literally billions of phone devices. They were doing interactive ad hoc queries on multi-petabyte data sets without, no operations, no checking. So the scale of that stuff is typically, hundreds, if not thousands of times larger than the average customers need. Most of our customers, most of the companies that are out there working, they're trying to get their website to work, and they're trying to get the databases interacting, and they're trying to make it so that the new applications that they build can scale. Google's really ready for that, and SADA is ready to help.
Awesome. Another question here. Chris is asking, I've heard that Google Cloud is less expensive than AWS, Azure, and IBM. Can you comment?
Yeah, there's a blog post series of them called Understanding Cloud Pricing that I wrote while I was at Google. And then there's a even more recent post from our team that describes the transitive property. So we sponsored detailed TCO analysis by the folks at ESG, and AWS has sponsored detailed TCO analysis from IDC. Both of those show, first, that public cloud in general is materially cheaper. I believe the IDC number is in the 60% range cheaper than an on-prem environment. And what my research under ESG showed was a 40+% discount from AWS coming to GCP. So GCP is way cheaper than your data centers, absolutely price competitive versus the rest. And independent of the individual building blocks, the actual negotiation process and the kinds of relationships that Google's ready to make from a partnering standpoint are just dramatically more flexible and in line with what I think modern decision makers want to take on. So it's not just a better deal, it's an easier deal.
Very nice. Very compelling. Let's see, another question here. Can SADA help with training around cloud native applications or migrating apps to cloud native?
Yeah, we run training programs all the time. We're one of Google's certified training delivery partners. We're also contributory to some of the open source and public training materials that are available. Happy to talk with customers about a dedicated training course just for their teams, or maybe they want to get a couple companies local together to share the bill for one. But absolutely happy to help customers not only sort of think through the issues, but get hands-on with this technology in practice so that they can see how containers work and how a cloud-native design is just going to prove to deliver, better risk mitigation versus more traditional designs.
Okay, nice. Another question here is about once they migrate virtual machines, say to Google Cloud, to create kind of a hybrid cloud, how do they stretch the networking? Is there some networking overlay, or how does that work?
Yeah, so there's this thing called the OSI model that describes the different layers that you need to be able to establish communication. So first you'll build a layer 2 networking connection to Google's infrastructure. You can either do that over what's called dedicated interconnect. Other cloud providers have similar tools. Above that, you can run a logical security layer like a VPN, or you can do that independently over the public internet. The same security capabilities apply. When you're above that into layer 7, Istio, the technology that I described, it automatically implements MTLS encryption and manages that encryption, rotates the keys, maintains certificate authority, all of that kind of complicated, potentially fraught with misconfiguration risk sort of work is stuff that's automatically implementable, both on-prem in Anthos delivered through Google and in cloud through GKE delivered on the Google side. So you can build an end-to-end network mesh, all in private, all not connected to the public internet, non-routable, but spanning the globe if you need. And Google's backbone is so incredible that it doesn't matter whether you're trying to connect to a data center that's in the next county over, or a data center in India, or the ones they've announced in now in Indonesia, right? There's huge geographic scope. So lots of companies pick public cloud specifically because that means that they get access to this global market.
Excellent. A great answer. Well, Miles, it looks like that's all the questions we have. It's been really great having you on the event today. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you. Really appreciate the cycles.
All right, excellent presentation there by Miles. We got a lot of good feedback. I know a lot of you out there in the audience enjoyed that as much as I did. So thank you for all the questions. Let's see. So I popped up a poll question on the screen here that is, what additional information would you like about the SADA solution? And while we do that, we've got a poll question on the screen that says, what additional information would you like about the SADA solution? And I'm just going to leave that up while we do our first grand prize and our next Amazon $500 gift card award. So the next Amazon $500 gift card is going to Sean Hatch of Virginia. Congratulations, Sean Hatch of Virginia. And the first of our 5 grand prizes, this is for the Microsoft Surface tablet, the brand new Surface Pro X. That's going to Brian King of Oregon. Congratulations, Brian King of Oregon. 4 more grand prizes and too many gift cards to count still to give away on today's event. Now, before we go to SolarWinds, who is next on the schedule, we're actually going to jump ahead a little bit because this is a live event happening from Las Vegas. We've got presenters coming in and out. Right now, we're going to go to Veeam because they have a big announcement they made here at the AWS reInvent conference just yesterday, and we've got a live demo of their brand new product in store. So I think this is quite a treat. I really enjoyed learning about this. I didn't even know about this until yesterday, that Veeam has a brand new product. And we're going to hear from Andrew at Veeam. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Andrew from Veeam, better known as AZ. Andrew, thanks for being on the event today.
Oh, thank you very much, David, for having me.
All right, well, take it away. Tell us about our journey to AWS with Veeam.
Yeah, well, it's not our journey. It's like the customers of us. They just come to to AWS, to other clouds. Are we allowed to say other clouds here?
We can. So. We can say whatever you want on here.
Yeah. Well, they come to us and they tell us, okay, we've been having enough of the virtual physical environments, and we just want to go to the cloud because it could solve a lot of the problems, and they think it could be ultimate solution for any of that. But then eventually, this journey, we have a lot of let's say considerations, and we have to warn them while they're doing that. And actually, I was kind of hoping to talk a little bit about it because we have some expertise in this area, and we have like a lot of customers who shared a lot of details with us. So it would be nice to learn from them, but not doing your own mistakes. And actually, I prepared the deck. I really hope that you can see a couple of slides here, just plain challenges that we have and some of the solutions that we, as Veeam, can help our customers and our joint customers, Veeam and AWS. So let me just go straight into it. Challenge number 1 is expectations versus reality. Is something that I was already kind of mentioned. Customers think that AWS can solve all the issues. Apparently it's not. If you have a clunky application, written in 90s, and you're thinking about kind of wrapping it up and just migrating to the cloud and then throwing more resources into it and expecting it to work better, eventually it's not going to happen. And so sometimes lift and shift strategy is not really applicable here. It's not really good. So I hate to bring that, but then if you're really thinking about migrating to cloud and kind of continuing your business over there, you should be thinking about also bringing the development team on board and actually rethinking and restructuring the things and the applications, the services that you run. So it would make sense finally whenever you appear in the cloud. Otherwise, you might just spend a lot of money on the annual monthly checks coming from AWS, just because you have to throw more and more resources and provision more and more EC2 instances and stuff like that. So that's quite of a challenge here. Okay, the second thing that we're facing at the moment is data growth, and obviously customers are trying to kind of to resolve it by going to the cloud and by using the cloud resources too. AWS storages, also a good final destination for the data. But then they offer a lot of services. They offer a lot of tiers, even for storages. Let's take the EBS storage, the S3, Glacier, all of that. And so the challenge is to actually to kind of to have all the data that the companies generate and have from their own customers, and to apply to special storages in AWS. So we at Veeam, we have the concept of the cloud tier, which is a really interesting way whenever you're migrating from on-premises to the cloud, to AWS in particular. You can do it in a steady, slow way and just control as much as you want to actually to migrate there. And our customers, they started to use AWS for, first of all, for archival operations, for archival purposes. And so having just a couple of data protection, like the backups or replicas being somewhere on premises, and then eventually, as the data ages out, it should be copied or it should be moved to AWS, to S3, and kind of, because it's infinite, because it's, you know, it's relatively cheap, and it could retain all the data you have in the world. So yeah, this is the challenge of data growth, and we are trying to support our customers coming from on-premises to the cloud, and doing it in a nice and a good way, so they're able to actually to ship all the data there. The third thing I was kind of hoping to mention here is, well, it's again related to data and the data growth and the data size, and it's really easy to move the gigabyte of data or terabyte of data to the cloud. But then what if you have the petabytes or exabytes, like a lot of it? And frankly, AWS has a solution for it. If you're familiar with this particular cloud, they offer a lot of services named as Snowmobile and Snowball, all of that. So they will actually help you to, you know, to migrate from whenever you are to the cloud, because they love your data, they like playing with it. But then what we can eventually do is we can, you know, we can make sure that whenever your data appeared in the cloud, there is no gap in the services that you provide, and there is no new procedures that you have to invent. And so it should be, you know, transparent all the time. So while we do not do any like native integration with Snow family whatsoever, but then for us, if you, let's say, if you bring the backup to the cloud, we can eventually seed from it, and we can just, you know, continue run the backup job if we're running it on premises. So that's what we're doing. For those mixed environments, we have the kind of a different challenge here. So it's pretty clear when customers want to just use the cloud and just to migrate all the data there. But sometimes they really want to have some flexible system to migrate parts of the data there, and to be able to spin up the cloud instances instantly, and to use it for, you know, for the DevOps, let's say, or for the kind of instant data recovery. If something doesn't work on premises, they want to be able to actually to spin up that Cloud EC2 instance and just run it there, because they need this service and they need that application. What we can offer here is the stack of technologies, what we call cloud mobility. And for us, it's basically a way to have any of the backups on premises and then just send them over to AWS. But the way how we do it actually is that we're trying to make sure that those backups recovered in the cloud, they will be running fine. And believe me or not, but this is quite of a challenge to apply all of the conversion that should be done, because it could have been, you know, the virtual machine with, let's say, VMware tools, or with some other things, or legacy drivers. And you don't want them to be in the cloud. You want them to be different. And or let's say, if it was a computer running UEFI system, AWS eventually doesn't support UEFI. So the software that you use to migrate this workload from on-premises to the cloud, it should have the kind of built-in conversion from UEFI to BIOS. And that's what we do. And, you know, the drivers, the networking, all of that, it could be a challenge. And so eventually, with us, it's not a challenge anymore, because we've been seeing a lot of the cases when our customers wanted to do that, and we developed the feature on the capability for them to be actually being successfully able to do that. That was challenge number 4. The challenge number 5 is actually related to cloud data protection. And I know that's a huge topic these days, especially after this Twitter rant that was, happening a couple of months ago. It just, apparently for us, the story is that, people start to use cloud and they think that cloud can be resilient like 100%. And they shouldn't really be worrying about like anything like cloud data protection, but apparently it's not. And those outages that's sometimes happening at that cloud or another cloud, and well, do not just blame AWS here. It's just, well, I have this example of AWS, but do not, think of them as evil here. It's like other cloud providers, they also have some of the issues. And then if you go and if you check the agreement that you signed with them, or the shared responsibility model, this is how they call this, the whole responsibility to be shared. You will eventually notice that they do not kind of care about the data that coming into the cloud. All they want is to provide the services, or all they want is to provide the infrastructure so everyone could actually use it and could benefit from it. But then they're just not able to, to care a lot about the data protection. They sometimes have all different clouds, but even AWS, they sometimes have their own cloud data protection solutions, like AWS backup. But then, generally speaking, it's a relatively simple solution, and sometimes it doesn't meet all of the requirements that you have, especially requirements of not being locked in the cloud, but actually being able to get the data out of the cloud if you need it. Because of all of the compliance and governance and all of the things that are happening in the moment, it's kind of popular case to actually not to be locked in the cloud, but to get the data out whenever you need to. And speaking of that, I actually wanted you to see something really interesting here. Let me show you a different console. Okay, so yesterday, for those of you who were at a AWS reInvent, were still there, you might have seen the things coming from Vim, like that announcement of the Vim backup for AWS, which is the cloud native solution for all of the AWS EC2 instances that you run there. And so eventually with this console, you're able to protect them by doing the snapshots, the backups, and actually to get the data out of AWS and put them somewhere on-prem. And I wanted you to see that console. I wanted you to, let's actually click on a couple of things here. So I'll give you the small introduction to the console. So it will be much easier for you to start using it later on. So whenever you install it, you just go to Marketplace, by the way. Go to Marketplace and you'll find the Vim backup for AWS free edition. For now, it's free edition. It's limited to 10 EC2 instances, but then it's in a matter of day, we'll just expand it to bring your own license and to paid edition. So don't be bothered with this. So once you deploy it from the Marketplace, there will be a note to add the administrator account here, and then you will go to the getting started page, which is right here. So it welcomes you, and it gives you a couple of steps, which and every if you go through it, you will get the check over here, and then you will be just able to create your first policy. So those steps are to eventually to add the AWS IAM role. Obviously, you have to give this particular console some access to your AWS account, which is obvious. We have a KB article if you need to know all the, the granular IAM permissions. We have the article to do that. But then if you don't want to be bothered, just go and create within the installation, it will create the default IAM roles, so it's fine. Then we have a notion of workers here, and by workers we mean sort of a proxy, which is a really temporary thing that we are deploying instantly whenever we need to perform some operations with, let's say, with copying the data to S3, or with performing the file level recovery for the specific instance. And what you can do here, I'll just click on workers and I will click on something that I've configured already. So you'll have to specify the region, the availability zone for the worker, and then the network settings, because obviously we want that worker or that proxy to be connected. And so it could, mount the snapshots that is coming to it, and it could actually process the data and send it somewhere else. Okay, I'm going to cancel that and come back to the getting started. And then, yeah, repository. By repository, we mean actually the S3 buckets, something that's kind of a like additional step of protection. So you can add it here, and you can decouple all the data eventually coming from EC2 instance or the EBS storage, and eventually targeting the S3 buckets somewhere. So for that, I need to add the IAM role here, actually to specify the buckets that I have there created and which my IAM role has access to. I can use the existing folder, or I can create a new one, and then I can additionally enable encryption if I need to. But then, easy as that, nothing really difficult. So this is the repository. And once you have all of them things together, the account, the worker, and repository, you can just go ahead and create your first policy, which is I'm going to do now. So for that, just come to the management, to the policies, and you can create your first policy. You give it a name, like something really easy. You select the IAM role, which I have a default. Then you have to select the region. Okay, so I'm going to use the North Virginia here, and I'll just enable it. Then you have to specify what kind of resources you want to protect. Okay, let me add some instances here. I'm going to protect my MySQL instance and enable. Okay, next. If I need to exclude anything, it might be handy if you have a bunch of resources or you have the tag applied to it. But then those are two steps that I have to stop at. So first of all, the first step of protection is to enable the snapshots for this specific EC2 instance. And for us, this is the second wave of protection. So what we are going to do is we're going to call the API and just to trigger the snapshots. Okay, well, you can do it yourself, but then it's really nice when the console can do it for you. The second step of protection is to enable the backups. And for this particular step, the backup repository that I mentioned, the S3 bucket, would be really handy. So on this step, what will eventually happen is Veeam will decouple the data from EBS snapshot and just move it to S3. And use the Veeam backup and application format, which, by the way, would be later on really helpful when you will be thinking about getting the data back from S3 to on-premises. And then we provide the cloud estimation, which is really a cost estimation for the cloud, which is really nice because you know all of the operations that you're doing with the cloud, such as triggering the API requests or but eventually doing anything rather than just moving the data into the cloud, which is for free. And so after that, we'll give you some of the estimations based on the settings that you specified and based on the, especially based on the schedule for this particular policy that you specified. So it's really handy how much you should expect to pay at the end of the month. And then nothing interesting, and I'll just click on finish, and this is configured. Okay, so this is my demo policy. It was never executed because I just created it. Yeah. And for the monitoring purposes, I wanted to go to the overview, and I wanted to show you this nice console or this nice view where you can see all of the instances that you're trying to kind of having access to, and the number of instances that you already protected, policies, everything. This is a nice kind of single pane of view with the things that you're trying to protect with AWS. And I guess this kind of should conclude the demo, but then trust me when I say that, okay, the backup went fine. So eventually we did a snapshot, then we moved the data into the S3, into the bucket folder. And then after that, you can go ahead and install Vim Backup Replication, which is a product for on-premises. And then you can point it into that repository, which is somewhere in cloud. And after that, bring the data from the cloud to it. Okay, David, any questions about that? Because we can actually talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. Yeah, I mean, first off, thank you so much for sharing with us this live demo of the brand new, just launched Veeam Backup for AWS. I feel
just
very
launched it
privileged.
yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel very privileged. I think the audience will as well. So thank you for showing us the product. Let's see here. We have some questions rolling in from the audience. I mean, obviously, with any new product, there's going to be a lot of questions. So let's see. First question for Veeam Backup for AWS. Does it just back up AWS instances only? It doesn't back up on premises. Is that right?
Yeah. So this is completely kind of new console for us, a new concept, and this is the product to be aimed specifically for AWS, as you can see from the name. So we might be able, in future versions, we might be able to expand the amount of services we could protect. But yeah, it's targeted to AWS only, and version 1 supports all the EC2 instances that you can run in the various regions over there. So yeah.
Got it. Okay. And then another question about the current Veeam Backup and Replication. Can it not already back up AWS instances?
Yeah. So we've been saying this story, and by the way, for some of the customers, they've been actually running Veeam Backup and Replication for cloud instances. Those things that, okay, you just take this software, you deploy it into the cloud, but then what's the way for you to actually to be able to point it to the actual EC2 instances, to use agents? And we have a customer who, use the backup and replication and agents built into the software to actually to protect more than 10,000 of the instances running in the cloud, which might be not the perfect solution, but at least it works. And for them, it would be just easy to migrate from that to this new console, especially if they use the universal license, which is another concept I didn't mention, but yeah, it's really great these days with Veeam.
Okay. And so in the future, this person's asking, will there be integration between Veeam Backup and Replication and Veeam Backup for AWS?
Yeah, so considering this is the first version of this product, Veeam Backup for AWS version 1, there is already some integration, like I mentioned on the session. So you can you create first of all the snapshot of the EC2 instance, then kind of decouple it and have as a backup in S3 bucket. But then eventually from it, you can point Veeam Backup and Replication into that S3 bucket. And since we have this external repository notion there, you can just see all the data. You can bring it on-prem. You can do things like moving it to Veeam Cloud Connect, or like moving it somewhere else, or recovering on-premises. Those are like different things, and the imagination is the only limit here. But then, yeah, eventually for the future versions of both of the products, you can expect much more integration to come into display. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this takes me back to, I remember looking at a brochure for Veeam Backup 1.0 when it was first released, and seriously considering buying it. But I mean, it was just released. It didn't have a ton of features, and whatever 10 versions later now that Veeam Backup and Replication's up to, how far it has advanced. And I'm sure Veeam Backup for AWS will, kind of have the same innovation trajectory, because you all at Veeam are always innovating. Another question here. So is this a SaaS offering, or do I deploy Veeam Backup for AWS into my own AWS account?
Well, I mean, could it be both? Well, the only thing you're doing is you're going to the marketplace and you're just deploying it by obviously using your own account. So eventually you have to have the account to run it somewhere. But then since it's available from the marketplace, and since we're going to do all the work of updating those builds that are in the marketplace, this could be considered as a SaaS offering, just because we're taking care of all the the software bits. So yeah, it's a combination of two.
Okay.
I would
Okay.
say that.
So the data though is stored in my own AWS account, and I'm paying AWS for that.
Yes, absolutely. If you turn this question in this way, the data goes to your account. We don't own no storage, no cloud storage, nothing like that. You just specify all the the IAM like roles and permissions, so the solution would work for you, but then it stays within your account. Although you can actually add a couple of other accounts, and you can do the cross-account things if necessary, but then it requires some of the alterations there. But yeah.
Okay. Let's see, another question here from James. He's asking, what's the pricing model for this, and are there different editions of Veeam Backup for AWS?
Yeah, so for now, I touched it a little bit. For now, this is the free version only. If you like right now, if you go to the marketplace, you'll be able to find only free version. But then it will give you a good estimate on how the the software or the solution works itself. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to have two other things to enable the bring your own license model, because obviously for us, having the universal license, it would be kind of our customers expect that. So they have the license already, and they should be able to use that just because we promised that this is the universal license, and they can apply it to like most of the Veeam products that we ship these days. And eventually it's going to be a paid version here, charged by AWS. So it will be like the paid edition, and you will go to the marketplace, you will just subscribe to it, and and you will be using it, and eventually pay for the for the amount of the resources that you're protecting. But yeah, just paying directly into AWS.
Got it. Okay. And let's see, George is asking, were the cost estimates that were shown, were those per day or per month, or?
Monthly costs.
Monthly costs. Okay.
Yeah. So if we go to policies, yeah. Oh, all right.
Okay.
I was going back to the cost estimation. Yeah.
And that's what we would pay AWS for, the protection of that data.
Exactly. Yeah. Although those are estimations, it doesn't have to be like absolutely valid value. It just, we expect that some of the data inside of your EC2 instance would be changed, and because of that, it's still the estimation, it's not the final cost. But then at least we're giving a good overview on how we expect it to to look like in your bill at the end of the month.
Right, and it's good to have some estimation, because I mean, with really AWS providing an infinite backup store, you might say just back up everything and take 20 snapshots a day and keep it forever.
That's a terrible idea.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, another question here. They're asking, do you have any, or will there be any architecture like best practices around instance sizing for the Veeam backup for AWS instance when it's deployed?
Yeah, so we already have some of them, and I don't want to go into very details, but then go to veeam.com and search for latest knowledge base articles. So we have some information there, and we have some built-in intelligence here too. If we go to configuration and workers, that is the temporary thing that I mentioned, sort of a proxy that helps us to do things. So you cannot really specify the proxy size here, but then what we're going to do eventually is to analyze all of the operations that you want to run at the moment, and depending on that, we have some intelligence to adjust the worker type and the amount of resources it's consuming. And so it's done in a way that we're trying to give you a lot of performance on the one hand, and at the same time to save money, not to oversize things.
Right. Okay. Well, so many good questions are coming in, but I'm afraid that's all we have time for on today's event. But if people want to get more information, they want to try it out, I assume they can just go to the AWS Marketplace. There it is. In fact, I just pulled it up. Veeam Backup for AWS Free Edition in the AWS Marketplace. Just click to subscribe and bring it into your AWS account and give it a try.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, I really appreciate the demo again. Thanks for showing us this exciting new product from Veeam. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, pleasure is mine, David. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Cheers, bye.
All right, that was a really cool presentation, a great live demo from Veeam. Now we're going to bring up a poll question for you out there in the audience. Just says, what additional information would you like about the Veeam solution? And I'll leave that up while I announce our next two prize winners on the event today. So let's see. We have another Amazon $500 gift card going to Bill Merteca from Illinois. Congratulations, Bill Merteca from Illinois. And we have another grand prize number 2 for a Microsoft Surface Pro X going to Janelle Pervez from Texas. Congratulations, Janelle Pervez from Texas and Bill from Illinois. Excellent. Well, I appreciate everyone answering that poll question there on the screen. I'll give you a few more seconds to respond to that. If you'd like more information about the new Veeam Backup for AWS. And now we are moving on to the next presenter on today's MegaCast. I'm excited to introduce Mr. Kevin M. Sparenberg, Technical Content Manager at SolarWinds, and Mr. Leon Adato, Head Geek at SolarWinds. Kevin and Leon, take it away. We're going to jump over to the live stream, by the way, and you should see the video playing in the video window.
All right. So today what we're going to talk about for just a little bit is how to monitor, manage, and secure your hybrid and multi-cloud IT environment. I think the important point about this is actually the second line. That,
yes.
Hybrid. What we're talking about is the strong reality in today's sort of IT experience, the hybrid and multi-cloud environment, and that speaks a lot to the SolarWinds point of view. We really are focusing on the boots on the ground experiences that people are having, not tomorrow's buzzwords.
Yeah, we care about what's actually happening, what you're dealing with on a daily basis, what you're looking at maybe in the next 3 to 6 months, not what your organization is looking at 2.5 years from now. Because you've got to troubleshoot stuff today, you've got to monitor things today. We want to make sure everything's working for you and give you the tools necessary so you can continue to do your job effectively.
Exactly. Okay, so just to sort of level set what we're talking about. So we're going to talk about some stuff.
Let's
right?
talk about stuff.
Let's stuff. What kind of stuff?
Well, cloudy stuff.
Cloudy stuff. Okay, fine. So that's what's on the slide. We don't need to read the slides to you, but we're going to go through sort of that process of getting from on-premises to public cloud adoption, which a lot of people are in the middle of, or most people are in the middle of it now.
Everyone's dipped their toes, and people are deciding. But the next slide actually will tell a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
So the thing that's interesting here, to me at least, is that the far left statistic here is that 91% of orgs are in the public cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Is that surprising anybody?
No, this is not my surprise face.
That is a zero surprise look. It does not happen. But I think the interesting one here is that organizations leverage almost 5 clouds on average.
There are probably people who are doing that, and we have a statistic linked there, but I think the main point is that most people are using more than one.
Yes, you're not one and done on these things. There are, because each one, regardless of which one you're choosing, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Oracle or IBM or GCP, any of those have very specific benefits towards them, and you can use them in different ways. So I think it's completely understandable that a lot of organizations are using at least 2.
Yeah. This is not, so cloud did not become your new offsite.
Yes, exactly.
So that's a point there.
Yeah.
The other thing is that Okay, so we're a little bit more than 50-50 Azure versus AWS.
Yeah.
Fine. Azure adoption is growing right now. I think their offerings, are becoming very compelling for a lot of businesses. It's fitting their business need. Again, not a huge surprise, but that item on the right, the far right block.
So for this one, 53% of our surveyed THWAC members use Azure. Now, for those unaware, THWAC is our user community, 150,000 registered users strong,
Right.
constant communications, and they are the people that use our software or are the ones that are the feet on the street. They're the ones that are going into closets and tracing down ports and swapping out cables and replacing hard drives and all of that fun stuff we've all grown up doing.
Right, and are transitioning into and dealing with the cloud migration now.
Yep.
And so they're also focusing mostly, or more than 50% on Azure. So that's just a data point, and it gives a sense of where SolarWinds' emphasis is. Not completely one or the other, but we obviously have a lot of customer feedback on that stuff. All right, so here on this slide, feel free to read it in your own time, but the point that jumps out at me is the IT skills, staff skills gap.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's petrifying to read, but when you stop and think about it, it's really not that scary.
No, it is actually situation normal.
Yeah, that is.
We're moving to VoIP. I have a skills gap. Okay.
I don't know how to do anything without a 110 punch. Yeah.
So Nexus, NSX, object-oriented programming, agile methodology. We deal with this as IT folks, IT practitioners all the time.
If your organization doesn't change in one calendar year, I don't know what's happening there.
Yeah,
because most places change 3-4 times.
You've got a very stable environment, and that's okay. But even so, when the new technology comes in and there's a business compelling reason to have it, there's always that IT staff skills gap. Can't say that 10 times fast. So the point I want to make here, though, is that how have we always overcome that? We've done it with tools.
Yeah.
We've done it with utilities or solutions that give us a greater level of insight or understanding into this new technology, and that helps me get up to speed with what I should be looking at. Obviously, we're also doing, self-training. We're also reading blogs and watching videos and doing all that stuff. But the tool is going to help you jump that gap faster and be effective. So that's what I wanted to call out there.
Yeah.
All right. So
there are basically 4 stages. This is what we came up with. There's 4 key steps for worrying about success: cloud, single cloud, multi-cloud, all of them.
Okay.
But realistically, it all starts at the control level.
Yeah.
And this is a really interesting one for me because we've heard so many horror stories from the field that, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take everything that's on my ESX host, or I'm going to take everything on my Hyper-V host, I'm going to lift and shift it all to cloud because there's this little tool that'll do it for me.
Right.
And boom, my entire enterprise is in the cloud. And then you get the first
And
bill.
then you get the first bill. And then
you get in someone's office.
Bring it back, and you bring it all back.
And then you try to Control-Z that as much as possible, and it doesn't work that way anymore. So you have to basically spin it all back up.
You bring it all back, you try to figure it out, and then you have a plan.
Yes, exactly.
So how's about don't do that?
Yeah.
Come up with a plan first, and that's what this slide is really saying is, understand your goals, understand why you're moving something to the cloud, and make sure that you can demonstrate and prove it.
Yes.
That's really what we're talking about.
Well, we always say that the IT people we know and love, the monitoring professionals we know and love, are ones that love data, like they love collecting and compounding of that. This is just another point to watch.
Yeah. Just, data enthusiasts.
That's a good word.
Is what we like to talk about. Okay, so on this slide, I think the key thing is, as we were starting to hint at, you've got your environment on-prem now. Baseline it now. Understand the workloads now. Understand what the things that we used to look at as sunk cost, right? I don't have to pay for CPU. I bought the chassis. I got the blades. It's all there. It is what it is. No, you need to know because that's going to end up having a direct fiscal impact as you migrate things. Also, so when you were speccing out systems, when you were a sysadmin and everything was in your data center, and someone said, well, how much CPU and RAM do you want? What was your answer?
The answer was always as much as you can cram in that box.
Right. I want all of it.
I want the all. Yes.
So I think now, because of elastic compute, because of that, we as engineers have to rethink that and say, what's the minimum it needs? What's the low point? It will expand out, but don't start off asking for all this compute power. And you're only going to know that, again, if you have those statistics, if you have those baselines. I would also say lift and shift is shit.
Yeah.
Beep. Yeah,
Sorry.
there we go.
It's very bad. We should not be doing it. You don't want it. Here's the thing. You need to instead change your mindset and do the improve and move.
Improve and move, right.
So it's go back, get your data, figure out what you're working with, and then you can actually make educated decisions about the sizing, the positioning, and all of that actually comes back to what the dollar figures are at the end of the day.
Right.
So can the end users access the stuff, and how much is it going to cost the business? And as long as those two things balance out, it's ready to move.
And I'll also say on this slide, we're also talking about understand how many orphan or zombie VMs you have before you move the entire thing.
Yes.
Your vast herd of servers like wildebeest across the Serengeti. Don't move them all up there.
Yeah.
Make sure you understand which ones are old and tired and don't need to be moved, and which ones are perhaps underutilized and really could benefit from it. Again, improve and move before you go.
Yeah.
Here, there we go. What we're talking about is, as SolarWinds likes to talk about, we want to monitor that stuff. Wherever it is, whatever you have, internet-connected coffee pot or whatever, that's always been the joke. But
I thought it was I/O toaster.
That also.
Yes.
So you want to be able to collect your metrics. Now, the other thing I want to clarify, monitoring is not equal to alerting.
No, they are not equal to, however you want to do it. They are not the same thing. One is critical, the other one is the actionable part.
Right.
So they are two sides of the same coin, maybe. They're intrinsically related, but by definition different.
Right, and so when we say monitor as much as you can, we're not saying alert on as much as you can.
Please don't.
Right.
Your mailbox will hate you.
Or whatever, your ticket system, or anyway, monitor as much as you can. And the point is that, again, the reality is a hybrid IT world. You've got some stuff on-prem that's never moving, some stuff that hasn't moved yet, some stuff that's in the cloud and probably is going to be coming back. No, really?
Yeah.
And so you want to be able to monitor the stuff you have wherever it is and whatever it is, whether it's a low-level infrastructure piece that's doing, your basic networking stuff, all the way up to your high-level, custom-crafted artisanal application that is more of an active interpretive dance.
Yes, and it's the pride of joy of that small dev team.
Right. Okay, but you want to be able to monitor whatever it is, and that means that your tools have to do that.
Yes.
And what we've seen is that vendors are actually really missing the boat, because many will say, well, we are cloud native, and that stuff on-prem is whatever, we don't care about it.
Don't worry, people aren't going to be using that in 6 months a year.
Right.
No, that's not the case.
There's no routers that are going to exist ever again. Core switches,
you had a conversation with someone at DevOps days, right?
Yes, I did.
It was about on-call.
About doing on-call, and they actually said, I don't understand why we have on-call at all anymore. I mean, can't you just destroy the instance and recreate it from code and go on? It's like, I don't think you can do that with your core switch yet. So the plumbing still exists.
Yeah.
And that's an important point to remember. But you need to be able to monitor all of it, and they're not discrete silos. So the impact of that infrastructure all the way across the spectrum, from that custom-crafted artisanal application that's running in the cloud and it's microserviced and it's all of that stuff, all the way down to the people in your offices, all of that matters. And you need to be able to understand how that's all interrelating along the way. And you need tools that will be able to do that.
And understand all the different layers. Understand the fact that this service happens to be hosted publicly somewhere, and we are actually traversing portions of the internet to get to that service.
Yes.
And making sure we can get all that stuff. And if that boils down to troubleshooting the internet, all of a sudden that's part of your job.
I love that part. We're gonna talk about that in just a minute. Okay. So here, the last step is not pop the cork on the champagne. It is an integrated, as we said before, an integrated set of solutions that will monitor, manage, and the key part here, the call out I want to make is secure.
Yeah, that's the most important part of this part.
Yeah, that we need to remember that the cloud providers have what is affectionately or unaffectionately called the shared responsibility model. Also means the MTTI, mean time to innocence. It wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
So you still have skin in the game when it comes to securing, patching, vulnerability assessment, making sure that nobody leaves your passwords in an unsecured S3 container.
Somewhere.
Right. And we talked about earlier, in another video, we talked about why that happens. So how does it get to be that something we used to do so well now ends up being this hiccup, or this, we trip over ourselves now that something's in the cloud?
Yeah, and I think we came up with the realization that people that are provisioning cloud resources and building cloud solutions are generally people that haven't been really working with the security angle before, because when they go into an organization and say, I need to build a server, they put it right through a server team. The server team secures everything, make sure the network side is secure, make sure all the policies are in place and everything. And now when me, Joe developer, can spin up my own box, I may not be forced to follow all those rules. It's the same thing that we talked about the network. People who are like, why do I need a network at my house? It's like, no, you.
Why do I need to subnet things?
Yeah,
because subnetting is still a thing.
It's still a thing. You still got to go A to B. Yeah.
Right. That they still exist, and the fact that the person who's spinning up a cloud instance doesn't recognize that the storage team, when it was on-prem, really did lock down permissions of who could get to that storage resource. Still has to happen. It's not just breathing and gravity, oxygen and gravity. All right, this slide can be briefly summarized as we got stuff.
We have lots of stuff, and it covers nearly everybody.
Yeah. One point I want to make is that it's also, we got stuff and it's available in Amazon Marketplace and
the Azure Marketplace.
The Azure Marketplace and the Azure and Amazon Store, whatever, the places. Yeah. You don't even have to download stuff. You can actually go and a couple of clicks, 30-day unlimited demo, play around with it, and we cover the variety of, again, monitor, manage, and secure things. So you're getting these slides after. You can look at it. I think it might be an eye exam on your screen, but there we go. Yep. And demo time. Here we go. Oh, I have to get out of that and...
Second one.
What?
It logged out.
Oh, it logged me out. That's why. Okay. We'll just wait for this login. I do want to point out that oriondemo.solarwinds.com is available to everybody all the time. So if you want to kick the tires on this and you don't want to download anything or try it, all our software is installed in one place, all in at the same time. It's latest versions. You can play with it. So as you mentioned earlier, when people start to dip their toes in cloud, it's usually software as a service.
Yeah, SaaS seems to be the easy thing because you get to eliminate so many layers of infrastructure. You don't have to worry about the software, you don't have to worry about the hardware, you don't have to worry about the patching, you don't have to worry about maintenance. It's not even like I'm building a VM somewhere. It's like literally I'm paying to talk to that endpoint.
Yeah.
And that's great. But it's normally the first thing. It's whether it is something like a NetSuite solution, or it's something like Office 365, or SharePoint Online, or any of the plethora of other ones. But making sure your end users can actually access those from wherever your end users work is kind of important.
Well, and it goes back to what you said. Now you own the internet.
Yeah.
You are responsible. And I've said for a long time, I've been in IT for 30 years, and I've said that to be successful, you have to have three things. You have to have responsibility, which you get the same day you get your badge. Accountability, which you get when you pass within 3 feet of a device or a service. And you have authority. And that's the tough one. That's the one we end up, as IT folks, we end up fighting for, because I can't fix it if I don't have authority to even get on it or make changes to it.
Or even as just monitoring people, I need to be able to at least read the stuff.
Right.
So I can help you.
Right, exactly. And the problem is that my ISP has not given me authority to change their router configs.
Or to even look at them.
It is mind-boggling
to
me.
It is ridiculous
that
they will not let me jump on their iOS and look through all of their stuff.
Really, Spectrum, could you fix that, please?
Yeah.
I need access.
Yeah.
Anyway, the problem with that is that it's not going to happen. So the fourth thing that you can have is visibility. Yeah. That's the thing. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at our O365 environment. If I zoom in here, this is a VM or a machine that's running in my location. All the way over on the right-hand side, there's my DMARC. Okay, and there we get into, so it's Charter Communications Network, and there's a bunch of devices.
Boring.
They're boring.
They're flat networks.
Okay, that was a flat one, but this one, oh, that one gets entertaining.
That one's fun.
Yeah, so this is every path that my data is taking to get to, ultimately, to the service, in this case, O365. I can see the entire thing. I'm going to close this one down just because it gets a little spaghetti. There we go. And the other thing that I can see about this is how much traffic is taking each of these paths and how long it's taken. So I can tell that this is 4 milliseconds and 60% of my traffic is going that way. And there, if I can mouse it correctly, that's 40%. Okay, that's the balance of the 100%. But this one is 1 millisecond delay, and this one is 4 milliseconds. I can actually click on this device and get some information there on the right that tells me, oh, this is router named blah, blah, and there's the phone number that I can call. So what do you think happens, when you call up Charter Communications and say, hey, router, AGG 22, blah, 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 interface number 2 is injecting 4 milliseconds of delay, What's the reaction going to be?
The reaction is the people who answer the call look over their shoulder and wonder where you are standing, because you should not be able to see this stuff.
I'm calling the FBI.
Yeah.
You've hacked it, right?
Yes.
Actually, that's not what happened. This feature, it's not even a tool. This feature, this aspect of NPM has been out for over 5 years
Yeah.
now. And I jokingly refer to it as Tinder for network engineers.
Network engineers, yeah.
Because like, can I give you my cell phone? Can you call me when you see it? Because this is a view they don't have.
And they can never have because of the way they partitioned their networks. They can set it up and they can hope they're in the best way. The one I like about this, and I don't think I've talked about it in a while, is if you actually rent MPLS or lease MPLS circuits from people, and they make a change in the night, and they don't tell you they're making a change, and all of a sudden you're having problems, this will show you exactly where that problem exists, and you can help them help you.
Right, because this is your view, your experience of their network. So we've got a sample data here that something went into warning, and you see that the network changed a little bit over here.
It looks like 3 of the endpoints for Office 365 that we were aware of responded slow.
Right, there's 5% packet loss, or there's packet loss on each one of them. Now that's not necessarily a network issue, but the point is that I can see why was there a problem 5 minutes ago, or why was it working 5 minutes ago and it's not working now. I have a time sequenced graph that explains to me what's going on. And again, you get the visibility so you're able to troubleshoot the internet. That's the first step.
And the other thing about this is the network engineer's best tool when someone comes up to say it's a network problem, because you can blatantly point and say, no, it's not the network. We're green all the way across.
Right. It's not. Certainly, it's not my network. But again, you know who you can call to say, "Hey, by the way, there's this thing going on." But that gives you the network path. But what about the actual application? In this case, O365. So we've got a summary page that we built that gives you the data from all my O365 applications. What alerts I have open, what the top statistics are coming in, all that stuff. We're going to take a look at one. This is my O365 environment, and I'm monitoring it. I'm pulling in information on the mailboxes, how my services are running, what kind of statistics and component, on the components I'm pulling, all of those things. And if I drill down into, let's say, mailbox, here's a view of the mailbox information and what kind of stats it's pulling and how it's behaving at that moment. But the point of this is not this specific thing. The point is that I have a cloud-based application, whether it was my, again, custom crafted artisanal piece, or it was something that was on-prem or something that was both. It's using microservices, and I'm able to see it holistically. I'm able to see everything from the network layer to the physical hardware or the non-physical cloud-based hardware, but I can see it as if it was cloud-based. I can see my cloud consumption. I can see my billing, all those things, all together to get that single view of insight into how my experience of this service is happening.
And that's the beauty thing you can go back with. Those metrics are great, especially for things like this, because O365 is a subscription based, and you've got, 40, 60, 80, 100 mailboxes that are no longer active. You should pull their subscriptions back so you're not being billed for them.
Right.
I mean, this is a way that, and we keep tying back to the dollars, but we don't want to go too far into it.
We talked about that, we talked about that, we talked about that, we talked about that.
Demo time.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, so that was a quick demo. Again, demo.solarwinds.com. You can take a look at all of that and kick the tires yourself, or you can download for 30 days, or you can install it from the Azure thingy or the AWS thingy or whatever, because I always get those confused. But another question we get is, that's wonderful. One more tool. I got to learn it. How do I do that?
How do I learn this? And a lot of us, I think I can speak for you and I can speak for me. Mine was thwack. Like, I read the admin guides. They are wonderful, they're joyous, and they are very long, and they're admin guides.
If you have insomnia, it's a great cure.
It's a great cure. But, I mean, the best way was actually talking to other people about how they did it. What were their recommendations? And for that, that's why we have the thwack community. It's where 150,000 people are out there asking and answering questions. Sometimes they're very specific for maybe something they don't understand. Like, I've never written an ACL on a PIX firewall. Okay, cool, someone has. Or maybe they're just getting into a weird discussion about who the best Starship captain is.
Spoiler, it's Mal.
It is Mal Reynolds.
But so we talk about a lot of stuff, and we also talk about the software, and we also talk about implementing the software. But it's not just that. It's really community support, IT professionals across the spectrum of what you do. We also have support, obviously. There's a partner portal, so that's good for both end users and also people who want to become partners, because you can find out somebody in your location if you're not US based, somebody who will be able to help you a little bit more than just, here's some software, go buy it. The customer portal gives you more than just information on where to download the latest patch. It's also user guides and things like that, and that actually takes you to this Success Center, support.solarwinds.com, which has not just admin guides and knowledge-based articles. There's also a whole training section where you can have live training, pre-recorded training, self-paced training, all that. And
all
even,
part of the SolarWinds Academy that rolls up, and if you become someone that's an expert on this, that's when you go and you sit down for your SolarWinds Certified Professional exam, become an SCP cert.
Yeah, we have certifications, and if you're looking for somebody who understands the software, that's a good marker of, oh, this person, has done more than just download and installed it once or something like that. And then Smart Start is also for folks who want to get the stuff installed and up and running as quickly as possible. So somebody will actually sit down and help you, get it installed. They're not going to come on site. What they're going to do is stay on the phone with you and say, okay, great. Next step, they're going to help with the design conversations. They're going to help with all those things. So there's a lot of different ways to get moving and up and running with this. All right, so, typical call to action page, you can read it for yourself. We got stuff to help you out, and that is the point. It's not just, hey, buy some stuff because my kids need orthodontics. It's that, we want to help make your weekends longer by avoiding unnecessary alerts, knowing, not just guessing that your stuff is up and running. Yeah. When something has happened, knowing exactly what happened and where it happened and where to get started fixing the problem.
And sometimes not even that, just where to not burn time.
Yes.
Sometimes just knowing where not to spend your time trying to troubleshoot stuff, chasing the red herrings, is worth its weight.
Yeah, absolutely. So come check it out. We appreciate it. And I think we have some questions.
Do we have any questions out there?
We did have a question about NPath versus PCAP. Maybe from your demo? Is there something about that?
The way they collect the stuff.
Okay, so spoiler, not traceroute.
Yeah, NetPath is not traceroute.
Yeah.
It is its own custom-built thing, and for that we had to have, basically we had to have something to craft our own TCP packets.
I will tell you, if you check out lab.solarwinds.com, about a year and a half ago, we did a few different videos on just how NetPath works. We did a whole whiteboard conversation, a chalk talk on it, so you can find out the exact mechanics of how it works, but not traceroute. So if you're in the habit of building firewalls and turning off ICMP, don't worry, it still works.
Yeah.
Then there was another question about what makes SolarWinds unique, really, in the marketplace. We are significantly prettier than the staff at other companies.
Smile.
I am luminously attractive. That is. Yeah. So, there's no point in saying negative things about anybody else. One of the reasons why I've done monitoring for 20 years. Every tool you can imagine, I've used, all that. The thing that I find compelling about SolarWinds is the breadth and the scope of the solution set. Yeah. 50 different modules, plus another 36 free tools, free as in beer, not puppies. And the ability to have a set of data that covers everything from your hardware, database, web-based synthetic transactions, wireless.
Real transaction monitoring,
right.
Tracing at the code level,
logging,
basically whatever you got, yeah.
All your areas of observability, and having that data go to a single place where you can consolidate it and understand the real impacts of how this aspect, let's say tracing, is being impacted by or is impacting another completely separate area like, routing or bandwidth. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons. Yeah. But for
me, it was because SolarWinds listened to customers, because for years, and I know you did it as well, on the THWAC community, working with the UX team,
yes,
contributing to the betas, actually going in, and every time I ended up saying, you know what, this is something I have to have, this has to be in here, or we're going to have troubles in 6 months or a year. In a release or two, it was there. And we have an incredibly rapid release cadence,
yes,
where we'll release 2-3 times a year, so you're not waiting for a new feature for 2 years.
Right, and the point there is that if you go on to thwac.com, you'll see that there is a feature request page for every single product. And our engineers are required to consider those feature requests, which are voted up or are voted on. So the highest voted items, they have to have a justification for why we didn't implement this yet. So that's the other thing, is that we really do listen to the folks who are using the tools and say, that's what we want to, that's where we're going to improve. That's what we're going to work on next. And then one piece of feedback, Dale said he's been using SolarWinds for a long time and loves the product.
Thank you, Dale.
Thank you, Dale.
So
shout out to Dale. That's all the questions we have.
All right, great.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you for spending a little bit of time with us, and you can find us in the booth at a variety of different shows.
Pretty much almost all of them.
SolarWinds.com, thwac.com. You can find Kevin and myself on there. You can message us, and we're also, of course, on Twitter and social media.
Yep. So thanks so much, and enjoy the rest of the Megacast.
Welcome back, and we're excited to be joined by Gil Haberman, who is a Senior Director of Product Marketing for Cloud Services at Nutanix.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Cloud is a thing, isn't it?
Yes.
And Nutanix is doing a lot around cloud. Can you kind of give us a level set of what we're talking about when we talk about cloud in the context of Nutanix?
Sure. So we have enabled customers to have cloud on-prem for many years now. Really, the core of Nutanix is simplifying daily operations. And to do that, what we've basically come up with is a new architecture where customers take traditional and commoditized hardware, and basically the software layer that Nutanix provides collapses everything into a single pool of resources that can be easily deployed and easily scaled out. And so many customers, 14,000 now, have adopted Nutanix for their on-prem workloads. And increasingly, with customers, we're learning that there is a need to move towards hybrid. And so we've been working for a while with customers on moving to this hybrid cloud journey. And so today we can talk about some of our thoughts about that shift and how we support customers through this journey.
That'd be great. In fact, our first talking point is around complexity with regard to hybrid cloud deployments. Do you want to kind of give us an overview of what that looks like?
Sure. So first, what we have found is that customers, as they supplement their on-prem deployments with public clouds, AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud most of the time, the constructs that they rely on are very different. So it simply looks very different because they use different systems, separate management, and so these deployments end up being like siloed. Mm-hmm. And what ends up happening is that there's some kind of a tension between on-prem and public because these environments are fundamentally different from one another.
And there's a couple of challenges there, right? One is that they're fundamentally different. Like you said, you have different people working on them, and because there's different people, you don't always get the integration opportunities you'd want to have.
Right. Exactly right. And if we think pragmatically, day-to-day operations of our customers, what ends up happening is that often they have business mission-critical applications where they have integrated into third-party tooling. They have developed practices for how to troubleshoot, the real-life stuff, right? And because they're unable to just simply use the same things as is in public cloud, it creates a lot of tension. And when they think about migration, for example, it becomes very, very challenging, the process of replatforming, retooling. And so sometimes it becomes not very practical, honestly. And so they're looking for a solution to really facilitate that movement between clouds.
And there's a lot of challenges there that some of you just mentioned, but a big one is, as the first one on the slide here, is skill set. And
Absolutely.
in fact, one of the things we talk about a lot is the fact that some of the biggest challenges organizations are facing is finding cloud-centric skill sets, finding people that actually have the skill sets they need to be able to fully take advantage of their cloud environments.
Absolutely. And our buyers are often those traditional infrastructure and operations folks who have been doing a great job on-prem. I don't think they object to the notion of also using public cloud and in that context not having to manage infrastructure as much, but yes, it's very different. And so, of course, there's some resistance there. And our approach is to really put them on a true hybrid cloud, as we call it, by effectively having a single software that spans both on-prem and public so they can use the same skill sets across multiple clouds.
Very good.
So maybe we can talk about what is needed. What is our approach here? So what we're trying to do is extend our platform to be a single cloud platform for any type of clouds. So in the past, we focused on making sure that different hardware vendors can run underneath the software seamlessly. Now we're trying to make clouds invisible as well. And so if you think about that kind of approach, what we really need is a single platform that can utilize the same constructs and skill sets as we talked about, so that can be used across the multiple clouds. Also, ideally, the result would be that there is seamless movement between clouds. So you maintain cloud optionality, you have a platform that can provide access to managing either on-prem, public, or multiple vendors over the long term. And then at the same time, if we are talking about public clouds in this context, when you do integrate, for example, into AWS, we really want to be in there. So you use the same AWS account for both cloud native and traditional workloads, so things are seamless. And I think if you look long term, the idea would be that we as vendors are going to evolve as well, so that we provide license portability. So you run workloads and our software in one place, but you can actually port with it later. And so that is really the path to true cloud optionality, and for customers to know that they're running in one place today, but they can plan for a hybrid and multi-cloud future beyond that.
Very good. And how invisible does this become for customers? I mean, they don't want to look at bolt-on solutions. Is it really just a single playing field for them to play with?
Yes. So the idea here is to go beyond some kind of centralized management, to actually have the same platform, same construct, and so on. So what we basically provide is this native extension from private to public. So the same software runs, instead of hardware that you have on-prem, it can now run on AWS bare metal instances. So truly the same software, and so the virtual machines and applications that customers have on-prem, as is, using our VPN and integration into the VPC of AWS, can simply move, maintaining the same operational practices to public cloud. So now you're using the same applications without significant impact to the application, without significant impact to your tooling or operational practices, but simply now you're getting out of the managing the infrastructure business. Also, what we're doing is this software runs on bare metal instances, but we're integrating into the AWS VPCs. So there's no network overlay. As a result, there is no complexity associated with it. We believe it's going to be better performance. And one of the interesting things is that in this type of topology, customers can use AWS credits. So you're inside that account. Customers from an AWS perspective see all these bare metal instances alongside the cloud native applications. And so if they have credits or discounts, they can utilize those now for these mission and business critical workloads that are running on top of Nutanix. There's one interesting aspect to this, and that is oftentimes people talk about maybe using reserve instances to reduce costs. So the price point goes down, but at the same time, when people think about bursting, often the bursting is on-demand pricing, so very high pricing. What you can do in this topology is actually use AWS bare metal instances as a bursting capacity, using some convertible reserve instances, and when you do not need these resources anymore, you hibernate our cluster, and you use those credits that are at low price point to actually use those for cloud native services, getting the best of both worlds, both the low price point, but also the best of bursting as needed.
And that helps expose some of the real benefits people are expected from cloud on economics is you pay for what you use and no more. And it sounds like there's lots of different ways to keep those costs in line for organizations to be able to get the benefits that they've been wanting from a cost standpoint as well as an operational standpoint.
Exactly, and you'll see as we talk through this other services we provide, we really try to help customers monitor their cost and govern their environment properly, and this is a big challenge right now.
Excellent.
Okay, so this is how this architecture looks like. So this Nutanix clusters is running within the VPC alongside the other services, but it's running on EC2 bare metal instances. And you can see here in the diagram is that you can use our VPN to connect to this VPC, and the outcome is that the same workloads can be used often without even re-IPing, really seamless in terms of migration from one to another. Our software already provides replication, so replicating the data is very easy. So really this is as easy as it gets, and we find that this is probably addressing the main challenges customers have right now with migrating across clouds. At the same time, we also benefit from the availability of bare metal instances across the world. So for customers who are thinking about maybe shutting down local operations you don't want to manage in remote regions, The good thing about the availability of AWS bare metal instances is you can take our software and now deploy it in all these different sites around the world. And so you get, again, the best of both worlds. No need to manage infrastructure, but you still have local availability there.
Very good. And we're going to talk a little bit about bringing some sanity to the multi-cloud world next. Nutanix has some has a suite of products that help organizations manage costs, provide recovery capabilities, and maintain their environments. You want to kind of give us a preview of those?
Sure. So what we have noticed, again, working with customers very closely, is that as they're driving towards this hybrid adoption and eventually multi-cloud operations, they need to drive better consistency across these environments. And so on top of this general notion of a single cloud platform, what we have started offering is a variety of cloud services that effectively standardizes and harmonizes operations, so the same practices can be deployed both on-prem and public cloud to provide better governance and better overall operations. So we're going to talk about a few of these, and these are the three. Calm, which provides orchestration, automation, lifecycle management, and self-service. Leap, which is our cloud-based disaster recovery service, which is a great use case for cloud, of course. And Beam, which provides multi-cloud governance, effectively allowing customers to govern in terms of cost and compliance.
Very good. And where do you want to start? Probably with something that will help us manage our environments better.
Yes, I think the foundation to operating this multi-cloud environment is how do we deploy applications and how do we manage them day to day. And our approach really is, let's first standardize, basically templatize the notion of deploying an application or an environment, so it's going to be repeatable and scalable over time. So what we do is allow customers to very easily capture entire application, meaning all the VMs and their configurations and dependencies all in one place, so that one blueprint can be deployed in a repeatable way. And that blueprint can be virtual machines, could be containers, could be a mix as well, which we believe is going to be very helpful. So maybe customers want to containerize just the front end, not the back end, so they can have a blueprint that basically orchestrates across both of these types of constructs. And so the outcome is that now you have a repeatable way to deploy, to manage the lifecycle. And that same blueprint is used for both on-prem and multiple public clouds. So it's really about just toggling where do I want to deploy this thing from one place to another. And so you drive this consistency.
And once you've put the effort into making something repeatable and figured out all the pieces, then people can do it on their own. And that's our next topic.
Absolutely. So what we basically allow customers to do is, so IT organizations very simply expose these blueprints actually as a marketplace for self-service that is based on users and roles and groups and so on, so that end users see something like this. They, based on their roles, get access to the specific environments they can deploy. And so in one click, they can get their environment. And IT actually likes this as well, not because they just provide better service, but also because they get better governance. Now they know who is deploying, how much, on what cloud. So really easy to control what's happening from now on.
I've always thought of self-service tools, they're often used for, well, intended for non-IT people, but IT people should be embracing these things because it makes their lives easier too. And I think that sometimes that message gets missed, is self-service tools aren't just for end users and developers and stuff. They're for IT people too.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Often where our deployment starts, I mean, this is an automation tool that can go anywhere, but it actually many times starts with the repeatable things that IT people do every day, and they just want to automate and then get this one-click access. And so it often starts with this simply driving automation for these basic things. So after customers have this way to standardize the deployment and management of applications, we need to protect those environments. And that's where our cloud-based disaster recovery service comes into play, where I just wanted to highlight this because this is a great use case for cloud, right? The notion that for the secondary site, the protection site, you often don't need that environment. So deploying and maintaining infrastructure just for disaster recovery purposes may not be the most efficient thing to do. So what we've done with the same idea of maintaining a single platform is build an extension that customers go into their on-prem environment, say, I want to protect these virtual machines. Recovery would be in that order, and that's pretty much it. There's nothing else to install and deploy. We like to think about this similar to iCloud. You go to iPhone, say, protect my files, and that backup is based on Apple creating an environment in the cloud, associating with your identity, backing up the photos. Everything is seamless. Why is that? Because they can make the experience very simple because they have this control over both environments. And so with our solution, you don't need to deploy a replication solution independent from a disaster recovery automation solution or setting up complicated networking. Everything really is seamless because it's the same environment, but the recovery would be in a cloud operated by Nutanix.
Very good.
So now the other key aspect that we find from customers as they adopt, let's say, AWS or other clouds in kind of pockets, kind of organically from one pocket to another, is that they really lack visibility and control in terms of cost. Bills can be, often I'm with customers, they say, okay, the bills were 100,000 instead of 5,000 initially, going to millions, really out of control. So one part is visibility. We provide with Beam a way to plug into all the accounts and in one place see all the AWS, other public cloud and on-prem accounts. And just that visibility often is already very helpful. I met last week with a customer that said, hey, we need something like this to get a sense for how many accounts we have within AWS, thinking it's going to be maybe tens, end up being 1,200 accounts, right? So they just lost control. Everything organically just was not really governed. That's okay, but as this matures, they really have to put these tooling in place. And so you get one way to visualize everything and then optimize the cost. So we identify things like underutilized different consumption, and we identify where there is things that are idle for a long time. Maybe we want to eliminate old snapshots, things that are misconfigured or not right-sized, and so we help in that process, as well as just offering ways to move to reserve instances to save on cost. And where things are going long-term is driving an automated, policy-driven approach to this.
That was my next question, actually, is this is informational. At what point can it take action for me?
Yes, absolutely. So right now we already provide this one-click solve, basically, maybe eliminate or something like that. But even beyond this kind of one-click, I'm proactively doing it. What we're doing is using machine learning to actually predict when an issue might occur. Maybe spend is out of control based on our prediction relative to a budget, or we're just seeing anomaly. The behavior is not normal. Maybe something's happening. We want to shut down something. So this is where things are going, more and more automation. In the future, maybe you can automatically deploy using Spot instances to save on cost. So really things are going to be automated over time.
Very good. And what is this, at the end of the day, what is the outcome for the customer? I mean, it's lower costs, less complexity. What else is there?
Yeah, so there's lower cost, less complexity. And the other interesting aspect is that once you allow customers to associate the consumption to business units, there's a lot more accountability as well. So now each BU is tracked against the budget and they know they're tracked. So maybe now they're a little more thoughtful in how they use AWS. Not because anyone wants to do anything negative, but just because now they're more mindful about it. And so that aspect of showback and chargeback is very useful for accountability.
When you mentioned that example of a customer having 1,200 AWS instances when they're expecting tens, it just screams risk and cost.
Right.
And I'm sure that they were far from alone.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very common and it's very organic and natural. The downside of how easy it is to start the account, to start consumption, is that people just do it, right?
I'd see with a credit card.
Exactly. So that's where we are, but now that we're trying to mature, we need to address that. So the other aspect, the same coin, really another side of the same coin, is about security compliance. When we hear of data breaches in AWS, I think most recently, most of the cases are actually not hardcore security, but mostly about compliance and improper configuration. So users simply not thinking about leaving databases wide open, not encrypted, no passwords. So really the conclusion for us was we need to bring the same level of rigor that customers have on-prem to public cloud. And so Beam, the same tool, basically allows to look into all these environments, again, both public and on-prem, and automate security audits. Some are standard, some are custom that customers can create, but the idea is that you continuously scan and alert customers, maybe ports are open or data is not encrypted, and then you get much better governance, very, very simply.
Excellent.
Sure.
And I think that's all we have.
Great. This was great, and I appreciate you having me, and I look forward to engaging with customers following this webcast.
Absolutely. Gil, thank you very much for your time. If you have questions for Gil, please make sure to ask them in the questions pane right now. We will be taking questions live, and we look forward to talking to you some more, and we'll be right back with our next speaker after Q&A.
All right, great interview there with Gil from Nutanix. Really appreciate that insight there. I've brought up the next poll, and that says, what additional information would you like about the Nutanix solution? And so I'll just leave that up here for a moment while we announce our next prize winners. And I do want to apologize. I was told that some of you didn't hear the previous prize winner announcement. So I'll just go ahead and announce all 4 prize winners for now. So let's see, after SolarWinds, we had Dong Lu from New Jersey, who won an Amazon $500 gift card. Michael New from Kentucky, who won a grand prize, the Microsoft Surface Pro. And then the next set of prize winners, we have Brandon Vickers, who won an Amazon $500 gift card. Brandon Vickers from Texas. Grand prize number 4 is going to Doug Olson from South Dakota. So congratulations to all the prize winners. Make sure you stay tuned. We've got a few more prizes to give away still on the event today. And now we are going to our next presentation and our final presentation on today's AWS, Azure, and GCP Cloud Solutions Megacast. I'm excited now to introduce Mr. Jason Carlin, Chief Innovations Officer at Flexential. Jason, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Always good to be at one of your events. This is a great studio. It's always entertaining to see where you are. But I look forward to talking to you today about innovation and sort of this idea around the 4th industrial revolution.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for being live in the studio.
Great. Yes, thank you very much. So Flexential is a national data center cloud hosting and managed services, professional services provider. Flexential comes from flexibility, which a lot of our customers really appreciate, and then essential. And we were just talking during the break about, our customers really come to us for production grade services and kind of always on availability. And that's what Flexential is all about. So I know we wanted to touch on the edge and cloud and all the things that we're probably hearing in the news in the last couple of days with reInvent. I thought maybe talking about where we are in this sort of evolution of technology, kind of this 4th industrial revolution, so to speak, really powered by the world of Internet of Everything or Internet of Things, sort of this idea around connected intelligence. And we're talking about cloud a lot. We're going to talk about edge a lot. We're talking about billions of connected things, many of which are already there today, and we don't even think about it. But that will really fast forward over the next couple of years, really just explode. And I think that's the real opportunity we have here to think differently about how we consume technology. Thinking about how the steam engine, to electricity and mass production to the internet and then cloud sort of in between, and then now IoT. There's been a lot of change in this sort of 400, 500 year history of technology. And we sort of shift from this idea of distributed computing and things, very distributed to back to centralized again with the cloud. And we, we're talking about workloads and where they should go. And really the power of the edge is about, processing a lot closer to where the workloads actually need to be and really help change the way that technology is consumed, and those use cases that they then power are just, much more impactful, which, I think is an exciting spot to be today. 50% of the user interactions will be powered by artificial intelligence over the course of the next, 3 years. So I know over the course of the last couple of days, we've talked a lot about machine learning and artificial intelligence and some of the improvements around those technology areas as well. So I'll hit on that in the presentation. So maybe just a few use cases, what really sort of drives this, kind of going forward. Smart cities, I live in Denver, so I sit in traffic a fair amount, $300-400 million a day just wasted sitting in traffic. And you think about the challenges around traffic management. There's lots of jurisdictions, there's lots of technologies. There isn't really one standard for all the traffic lights and the signaling protocols and things like that. So trying to go grapple that, you have to come really at it with a new set of solutions to really change the way that we look at transportation. The more urban environments grow and, the more traffic, the more mobility solutions we need is an area where edge computing really helps. Major League Baseball is a customer of ours. Most of you would probably recognize that the professional sports organizations, their viewership and their sort of fan base has sort of stalled, and they're all out there trying to figure out how to develop new ways of bringing the fan into that experience. And you think about a baseball game with all these data feeds, and you've got camera feeds all over the ball field. Most of that just gets thrown away, and what a lot of the professional sports organizations are doing are trying to find a way to go use that, enrich it, go to augmented reality, virtual reality, and really bring that fan into the experience. And then smart health. I think yesterday or the day before on stage with Cerner, I think it was mentioned that almost $1 trillion of waste is in sort of the healthcare industry. And you think about $1 trillion, that would go a long way in helping a lot of people that can't afford, coverage. And I think that's an area that, edge and AI and machine learning can very much power, going forward. And a lot of these concepts are in the Gorilla Guide, which we, did with you guys. And I know there's a link at the end of this on how to get a copy of that. So I talked a little bit about sensors and IoT. I mean, the real story here is that these things are everywhere, right? And increasingly, this is becoming embedded into our day-to-day lives. But what has sort of started to emerge is this concept of what is edge computing and being able to take data, process data much more locally, and to really improve the response time. And when you improve that response time, you're able to change the types of use cases that the technology can be used for. You think about 100 milliseconds roughly to get a packet across the United States. I mean, 100 milliseconds doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a tenth of a second, right? And most applications today don't just send a little packet, and then they're done. It's really more of a precipitous kind of architecture where it's constantly communicating. So if you've got that latency built into your application, it's really tough to do real-time decision making. Think about a car rolling down the road. A tenth of a second is potentially yards and yards and yards of a car moving, right? And so you don't want to wait that long to get that decision back. You think about traffic management and something that we're doing in Colorado with the city in Denver. Looking at 3 or 4 different jurisdictions over about 10 square miles, using video technology to track where cars are and to track where they're going and where really the traffic patterns lie, to really go then change the signaling in real time, right? To say, look, we can actually change the traffic in these 3 or 4 different blocks to increase the flow. And again, you can't really do that if you've got to wait for a transaction to clear across the country every single time. So we talked a little bit about data growth. What we have traditionally been worried about probably for the last 50, 60 years in IT is the idea of business data, right? It's the documents we create, it's the financial transactions, it's the structured, unstructured data that we've all been worried about for many years. What now has been sort of added on top of that is human-generated data. So just think about the content that you might create, every day by taking pictures and then posting it on Instagram and then doing it on Twitter and then on LinkedIn, and so you're making copies of all this data and then creating metadata as you go. But then there's also sensor data, so the ability for whether it's smart IoT sensors that might just be providing a couple of kilobytes of data every few minutes because they're monitoring the temperature of a bridge or something like that, or video, which I think I touch on a little bit later in the presentation is very much the fastest growing sort of sensor platform that we're really starting to see customers use out in the wild today. The other challenge with all this data and why I think this edge computing concept is so important is because you can't bring that data all back to a central location. It just isn't possible. The optical technology is getting a lot better, but it's more about creating bigger pipes. Speed of light is still the speed of light, so you can't move the data faster. You can move larger amounts of data faster. So I think this really is the challenge for companies that want to take video, want to take LiDAR, want to take very rich media platforms and use it for decision making. Is it just can't be done across the country. It's got to be done either within potentially a region or within a state, or even in some cases we were just talking about EMR and medical records and things like that within a couple hundred miles potentially of the hospital. And so I think this evolution of technology is still going to have a lot of centralized elements, in cloud data centers, but will increasingly have an important edge element as well. So we talked a little bit about smart cities. Other areas that IoT is really making an impact is in industry and manufacturing. It's been around there for quite some time. Connected health, we talked about. Smart homes and smart grids, being able to understand electricity usage and in some cases regulate that on demand. We're looking at like the situation in California where electricity, delivery is becoming a real issue. Having smarter systems that can help regulate that in real time, may help with some of those conditions. So really the IoT predictions continue to sort of double, triple here over the course of the next 2 or 3 years. And again, there needs to be a place to go put that data. And increasingly, if you're going to make real-time decisions with that data, you want that stuff a little bit closer than sitting in some cloud across the world. So I talk a little bit about video and sort of why I like to call it the killer app. It's increasingly in a lot of countries and a lot of use cases and a lot of sectors is becoming very, very important to technology deployment. And it's because the richness of what you can get now out of video, whether you're counting cars, you think about the old sensors on the road, those things that you drove over and it counted the number of cars, which I think Bill Gates was somewhat responsible for back in the day. That gave you a car count, but it didn't really give you any other intelligence about what was going on. And now you could, if you wanted to know how many red cars you see every day within, some certain range, or even look at a license plate or understand where that red car goes, over the course of a day, to give planners a lot more data than they had in the past. And another great use case would be in manufacturing, where there may be safety issues within a facility. You've got workers, working on complicated machinery, and the chance of something, falling and somebody reaching down and grabbing it, and then having an accident, right, is very real. So there are companies like GE and others that are deploying video technology to essentially geofence areas so that they can alert when something is going wrong, and then put an alert back out into the facility that says, hey, there's something wrong, please, stop, or even turn off the equipment automatically if something does fall. There's LiDAR, which is a combination of light and radar technology that can actually detect whether you're wearing gloves or you're not wearing gloves, and maybe in a scenario where somebody needs to be wearing gloves, but maybe they shouldn't be wearing gloves because it might get caught in some piece of machinery. They can also use that technology to detect whether the human is doing the right level of work to assemble whatever they're assembling. So I mean, it's very rich set of data that you really can't be replicated by RFIDs or anything like that. And I think really the power of this, we're just starting to really see. And there's always going to be privacy concerns. I think we've got it up there on the slide. Certainly, security kind of goes both ways. Facial recognition, there's already states that and cities that have regulations for government usage of facial technology. But there's other countries like China that don't have any of those regulations, and they're able to sort of detect crime in some unique ways. So I think we're kind of at the beginning of this sort of sea change in how this technology is going to be used. I think in some cases we've got regulations that have sort of moved a little bit faster, perhaps, than the people understand the technology. But super exciting. I think we'll continue to just provide some great benefits around quality of life as we go forward. IDC, I just saw the stat the other day. By 2025, 90% of enterprise apps will be AI enabled. And so you think about that. I mean, that's what we're 5 years away, and just to give you a sense of how fast AI and machine learning, technologies are being embedded into everything that we do. I think on the previous slide it said 50% of your user interfaces in the course of the next couple of years will be AI enabled as well. So we're starting to, as whether it's a chat bot or whether it's an IVR. These things are being embedded, in all the day-to-day things that we're doing. And I think it's a great, also, a set of benefits. Healthcare is one where, maybe we can use AI and machine learning technology to look at a scan, identify, an area that maybe a doctor wouldn't have noticed, right? And I think back to the Cerner comment I made earlier, $1 trillion of waste, a lot of I think 50% of patients that end up having to come back because of some issue. If these are areas that, again, we can use technology to really help improve, quality of life, reduce the cost, and do a better job. Infrastructure, I know for those of us that live in areas of the country where it's raining here right now, but potholes and driving is difficult for a lot of reasons. There's LiDAR technology that will scan roads, point out where the potholes are, and that vectors the maintenance crews to go fill it. That's real technology in use in a lot of cities today. And then we've got other IoT use cases around manufacturing where, again, very complicated architecture is very, very complicated machinery, like that's a GE turbine there. If something is put together incorrectly, being able to detect that quickly, and it'll just save tons of money down the road for a manufacturer of complex technology. Apple's been basically serializing the contents of its iPhone for the last 15 years. They know where every single part sort of comes from. So if they need to go trace back into the supply chain to say, hey, we think we've got some bad silicon or whatever it might be, they're able to go track that down. I think that's again, something that we'll see sort of across the board as we go forward. And then in terms of thinking about hybrid edge and what this means, about the numbers vary depending on who you talk to, but I think somewhere between 70, 80, 90% of applications today are still basically sitting inside data centers on premise. Whether that's in a hospital sitting in the basement somewhere, whether that's a bank that has their own data center. What we've seen over the course of the last 3 or 4 years is this emergence of cloud native. Cloud native obviously is going to hyperscaler. As more applications are developed and older applications are replaced, we'll see that hyperscale growth continue. But like I said, they're deployed typically in very centralized locations. And as we start to develop new technology that needs real-time data access, that looks at things like video that still requires a large amount of bandwidth to capture and then to process, we'll see this edge emerge over the course of the next couple of years, and got a lot of pilots underway. I talked about Major League Baseball as one where they're looking at how to deploy technology closer to the ball fields, and that's really happening across the board. Logistics companies trying to go deploy technology, near their warehouses to do better intelligence around what's in the warehouse, where are things moving. What's there? The idea of RFID tags now being replaced by video. I mean, so all this stuff is a great great set of use cases that help us sort of drive into this edge world of the future. I talked a little bit about latency. Like I said, it's roughly a tenth of a second to sort of move a packet across the country. If you're doing manufacturing, if you're doing some of the analytics I talked about with smart cities, again, that's just too long. So this architecture of edge is sort of emerging where core data centers and cloud is still very important and allows you to do rich data analytics. Think of the old decision support type of use cases where you might want to be able to run reports on stuff that you looked at 6 months ago or a year ago, versus some of these real-time data analytic use cases that sit very close to the end user, close to the end eyeballs. All of the larger social media platforms, all of the large content and media companies all have deployments that basically sit inside cities so that they can stream content within those cities and keep the response time quite high. Companies like Facebook want it to be local because the ad placements go a lot faster, and when you're competing sort of for ad placement, that latency can actually kill your revenue, right? So there's a lot of great use cases that that are emerging sort of around the world of edge, and we at Flexential think we're in a good spot for this because we have data centers kind of scattered across the country and in North America that allow us to go take these workloads on, get them very close to the end user applications and the end user eyeballs, and help reduce that latency while doing some other great stuff as well. Just an idea of our footprint here. I mentioned North America. We also have a node in Europe, but we also have a lot of rich connectivity that continues to grow across the world. So we actually have two of the fastest links into Australia, New Zealand, mainland China, Japan, that terminate into our Portland facility. That's an alternate path. Most of the older connectivity from that region went into LA. So this really provides a diverse path, but in some cases actually faster. And then we just announced our connectivity into Brazil on our network as well. And then we've actually taken all of our data centers and internet networked them together. So if you're in one of our facilities, you have access to all these other great networks, but you have also access to our data centers. So if you want to do disaster recovery, say between Minneapolis and Dallas, you're able to do that just within our capabilities. You don't have to go order a circuit and go manage that yourself. But then also we've got a rich set of SDN partnerships that give us connectivity to the hyperscalers like Amazon and Direct Connect and things like that as well. So the network is just really important for a lot of our customers, and I think it's a great differentiator for us in terms of some of the things that we can do in the market. And I think finally, the Gorilla Guide, there's a couple of versions out there, but here is the link, certainly for that, and happy to make sure you get that, as well as the newer version that we did with you guys that talks a little bit more about some of the edge use cases.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. Well, Jason, really great presentation. I do want to point out that Gorilla Guide is available for download right there in your audience console. If you click on Handouts, you can see there's a link right there that says Flexential, and you can download the Gorilla Guide from there. Let's see, questions from the audience. While we do that, I'm just going to bring up this poll question. And the poll question says, what additional information would you like about the Flexential solution? So let's talk about some of these questions that are coming in. Jason, the first one they're talking about is, when it comes to edge, what are you seeing in terms of AWS? I mean, we're here at the reInvent conference, or across the street from it, I should clarify. There's been some big announcements about the AWS Outpost solution. Can you just brief us on exactly what that is, and how could it help companies with edge?
Yeah, I mean, certainly AWS understands this latency issue as well as their customers, and for customers that want compatibility with the Amazon stack, which is really a robust, platform, Outpost allows them to bring that capability, into a data center like ours, and allows them to run their applications natively on top of AWS, but it's a lot closer. So it reduces that latency gap. There's a couple of different variations of it. Outpost is fairly flexible in terms of where it can go, and you pay it as a service essentially back to Amazon. And we're partnering with them around the details on that. The other area is this idea of local zones, where I think they announced their first one in LA which is a pop for us as well. So you think about all the workloads in LA, a lot of media and entertainment, fairly major shipping yard, area. Again, all these big data, video-rich applications require, those stacks to be, really right there in LA. So I think what we'll see as this progresses, just this rich framework of these services being much more local than, traditionally you're either on the West Coast or on the East Coast.
Yeah, you make some great points there. I mean, I was here at reInvent 2 years ago, and I only got to go to 2 sessions, but one of them I went to was actually a Netflix engineer who presented on how Netflix has these like CDN distribution pops all around, the United States and the world to help make video content faster because you're local. And it was something I never thought of. I pictured, well, Netflix is just there in the cloud and I download the video. But really, you talked about a lot of use cases where the data has to be distributed. Self-driving cars, hospital, medical records, all these things. So I'm curious, for the trends for 2020 in the future, what do you see being some of the most common edge use cases that will be increasing? Or
retail is an area that is continuing to move very quickly. As we all know, the retail experience has changed dramatically in our lifetime, right?
Yeah.
We used to go down the street, then we went to this shopping mall, and then we went to this big box store, and now the box just comes to our doorstep, within an hour. So that has all, changed. And I think retail is trying to reinvent how it takes that customer experience. And really, I would say the edge really is all about the enablement of the customer experience.
That's a great point.
And,
yeah.
Whether that's how much time did you spend looking at the jewelry case over there? Did you pick up an item? Did you set that item down? Did you end up buying it? Could we just charge you automatically because we know who you are? Either through your phone, NFC, device on your phone, or the radio on your phone, or facial recognition potentially. And so I think that's a big area. Industrial IoT, I think, the safety concerns within manufacturing, I think is a big concern. Transportation, smart cities, safe campuses. We're doing some work around that, just in terms of trying to get safer schools out there, and really wherever there might be a lot of people gathering, even at a conference like this, there's a lot of technology being deployed to keep that stuff safer.
Yeah, and I know you were talking about the traffic flow, traffic control cameras. Being able to have some system that's local kind of dynamically control the traffic flow to make it as efficient as possible. That's something that we could all appreciate.
Absolutely.
I'm sure.
Every day.
Yeah. So, let's dig in a little bit deeper into just Flexential. I know Flexential has a number of data centers. You have your own network, a massive network. Tell us a little bit more about what you all do at Flexential and some of the problems that you all help companies solve.
Sure. So 40 data centers, 20 regions, so roughly, about half, not quite half the states in the U.S., covered, and then, really the whole United States covered just from a latency perspective. But most of our states and regions have more than one facility. So for customers that want to do kind of active disaster recovery, they can actually run workloads within close proximity, but they're still, miles apart, which helps. I talked about the networks helping with disaster recovery, helping with peering, back to your Netflix use case. We have a lot of customers that don't want to backhaul a lot of traffic. They want to get it off their network and get it as fast back to the source or back to the consumer as they can. And so we have these great peering relationships, and that network that we run, we guarantee 100% uptime. We actually have DDoS mitigation built in. So if somebody's trying to attack you because it's a holiday and they want to disrupt your website or something like that, that's all sort of built into the platform. And then we offer cloud services as well. We are a VMware verified cloud partner. We're an Amazon certified advanced partner as well. So we've been helping customers for really 8 or 9 years on implementations of cloud, and then increasingly how to do this hybrid thing that everybody's talking about, right? It's sort of, and I joke because it's a lot of companies are still very multi-cloud. They use cloud for different clouds for very specific use cases, and not a lot of it is integrated together. And the world of hybrid is meant to be something that is more fluid than multi-cloud. It's something that if you can write your application, and Kubernetes and some of the Fargate stuff is a great example of this. You get some additional portability that allows those applications to be distributed, which the edge is going to require you to have distributed applications. So that's one area that if you're just trying to figure out how to tackle some of these issues that we talked about, looking at containers and Kubernetes and technology like that would make a lot of sense.
Okay, excellent. And so does Flexential have a team or a group that helps companies out there sit down and kind of analyze, hey, these are the applications we have today. These are cloud native. These few are cloud native. These are legacy. What should we do? Do we need to refactor applications? Where should we put this data? Does Flexential help with those kind of decisions?
We do. We've got a ProServe team, highly certified engineers. A lot of them are here at reInvent, but they're scattered across the country, and they take a lens of trying to be agnostic, right? So We're really trying to help the customer take a look at their application, of which a typical enterprise has 1,000 apps, right? So they're all in a little bit of a different state. Some are very old and they can't find the person that wrote it, all the way to cloud native, and they're trying to find a way to optimize. So that team can look at that from a bunch of different perspectives: reliability, availability, cost, security, and compliance. There's still a lot of concerns on people that use hyperscale in terms of how to audit, right? And because auditing is different. You can't just send your auditor to an Amazon facility.
Right.
So there's still, whether it's the security industry or firms, still trying to kind of grapple with all those issues. And that team can sort of take that on for you, and then figure out where the best place for your workload might be, and help you secure it. Teach you how to take care of it, or take care of it on your behalf.
Yeah, I like that. Because I know a lot of companies out there. Not to pick on the CEO, but he might see an ad in the Wall Street Journal, move everything to the cloud and pay pennies on the dollar. And, there's kind of that cloud perception. And then there's the cloud reality that you're talking about there. And your team really knows that cloud reality and understands all the complexities, that are involved in that.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like you guys could help a lot of companies out there. All right. Well, I think that's all the questions we have. If somebody wanted to get started with Flexential, if they have a challenge like those challenges we've been talking about here, around hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, what do you recommend as the first step?
Well, I would definitely take a look at the Gorilla Guide. I think that does a good job of articulating, probably better than I did on this, some of the pain points and where I think the opportunity lies. But then I believe we've got our email address and our phone number out there too that you can reach out. The good thing is we've got real life people that you can talk to. We like to come do whiteboards and learn about your application and some of the challenges that you're having, and keep it very sort of partner focused conversation.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jason.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. For more information on Flexential, visit flexential.com, and like Jason said, just download that Gorilla Guide there. It's in your audience console. That's super easy to do. One click, and you can download it and read it after today's event. All right, and with that, it's time for our final prize drawing. Let me go ahead and bring up that slide. All right, so the prize winners for today are... Here we go. All right. We have our final Amazon $500 gift card going to Thomas Newton from Massachusetts. Congratulations, Thomas. And our final grand prize is going to Jeff Kirby. Jeff Kirby from Texas, you won the Microsoft Surface Pro tablet. Congratulations to you, and congratulations to all the winners on today's special AWS, Azure, and GCP Cloud Solutions Megacast event. Now, before you go, I want to remind you to subscribe to our podcast, the 10 on Tech podcast. Follow us on LinkedIn. That's where we post all of our latest and greatest content. And, of course, we hope to see you on the next event. That is the Data Protection, Disaster Recovery, and Disaster Recovery as a Service Megacast that's coming up, I believe, a week from today. After today's event, when we end the webcast, you'll be automatically redirected to events.actualtechmedia.com, where you can find out more information about that Megacast. Again, thank you so much to our audience for joining us on this event. We hope that you enjoyed the event, learned a lot, and got all your questions answered. We'll see you next time.